All right, I'm going to call the Willits City Council meeting to order on this October 9th at 6:30 p.m. And at this time, I'm going to ask the American Legion to come up to the front here, if you would please. And then I'm going to ask everyone else if you'll please stand. And Roger Ham is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And so, this is our First Commander, Curtis Shield, First Vice Commander, Kennedy Cooper. This is one of our trustee, Carolyn Honakfar. Can I just have a few words, if that works for you?
Yes, thank you for coming this evening. And I know that you weren't able to be here on the last event we had for 9/11. You were at the high school for the event, and just wanted to always take an opportunity to say thank you for your service to our country and just to our community each and every day. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Roger. He's going to give us an update on the American Legion and a little more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I know, change glasses, right? That helps. The American Legion Post 174 has been part of this community for 104 years. It was chartered October of 1920, so I don't think there's anybody that was here at that time, including myself. Anyway, you know, for those of you that have lived in this community for a while, I think you know kind of who we are and what we do. And I certainly know a number of the people on the panel, besides the mayor and the vice mayor, and Larry. But I'd like to talk just briefly about, when you talk about community, and the American Legion, you know, I'll just say my mantra of who we are as Legionnaires in this city. We are veterans serving veterans and the community in which they live, and that's important. One of the 4 pillars of our organization is called Veterans Advocacy and Rehabilitation. And what advocacy and rehabilitation is that we advocate for veterans on a state, federal level to get the benefits that veterans have, you know, that they've earned. Believe me, folks, this is not an entitlement program. They're the ones that put their life on the line. They signed the blank check that said up to and including my life. That's who we are. That's what we stand for. And so on a local level, as it relates to helping those veterans with rehabilitation and the advocacy, in other words, being able to speak for them, how many of you have noticed the small Army helmets at a number of the restaurants or whatever around town? It says Helmets for Heroes. And so those little coin piggy banks, we take those funds, and that helps advocate for those veterans. So that's one of our pillars. Another pillar that I think is important is Americanism, and that is to instill patriotism and to cultivate civic responsibilities. One of our efforts in California is the American Legion Boys-Girls State Program, and it teaches young people how government works from the local level, meaning like a city, through counties, the legislature in Sacramento. As a matter of fact, this quasi group, they elect their own make-believe governor and Supreme Court justice as well. the participation of our young people in another program is called Wreaths Across America. And that's the remembrance ceremony that we can teach that the freedoms that we have as Americans, they're not free. If not for the sacrifices made by the military through the years in multiple wars and conflicts, we might be seeing a different America than we see today. Our organizational pillar of children and youth is to foster the learning and growth to become responsible and productive adults. And so what do we do on a local level? I don't know if you're baseball fans, but American Legion Post 174 has Post 174 Baseball Club. If you're not into baseball, we're not into football yet. Another, or the scholarships that we're able to award to high school seniors, or our ability is to talk to young people so they understand what it is to be a veteran. And I think that that's important, that we step forward for what we think were the right reasons in support of our country. And so, City of Willits, we are here for you. Now, our ask is that you encourage your military constituents, veteran constituents, to join us so that we can continue to provide valued programs and demonstrate to the community that Americanism and patriotism is alive and well in small town America. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, American. Thank you. All right, with that, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Connie? Here. Strong?
I'm not sure if I'm hooked up here.
We can hear you.
Can you? And I want to be muted most of the time so I don't, if the phone rings, it doesn't disturb you all.
Okay. Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Present.
Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes, present. All right, everyone is present this evening. And moving on to public communication, the City Council welcomes input from the audience. If there's a matter of business on the agenda that you're interested in, you may address the council when this matter is considered. If you wish to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda, you may also do so at this time. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. The Brown Act regulations do not allow action to be taken on audience comments in which the subject matter is listed on the agenda. Members of the public are asked to observe the rules of decorum. While the City Council welcomes public criticism of policies, procedures, programs, or services of the agency, behavior that disrupts or disturbs these proceedings, we would have to ask you to leave. And there's a little more on there, but I know that we haven't had this issue, so I won't continue with the rest of it. So at this time, is there anybody who would like to address us on an item that is not on the agenda? I see we have one over here. So if you wouldn't mind stepping up to the podium and stating your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Fine, thank you. My name is Beth Rydell, and I don't think it's on the agenda, but I'm not really sure. I want to speak to the park where we're across the street, the Bud Snyder
So
Park.
the park, just so you know, the
Is
park
on-
is on the agenda. It's item number 9A, and shouldn't be, my best guess is it's about 20 minutes from now,
I
the
need
item.
to get home. I have people waiting for me, so I just want to
Go ahead.
let you know that I have information that there's been a lot of controversy over the cement, and I actually printed this out, it's regarding grass pavers, or the other option is grass mesh that you can put over it. They're both capable of having a wheelchair go over them, They allow you to have grass and at the same time have vehicles drive over it and not kill the grass. They're a way that we can have our lawns, our grass that we can play on easily, and also have an area that you can have trucks, cars, the farm market if you want, whatever, be on it. There's a website on this information. I'd just like to leave this with you and hopefully have you consider it as an option, which would, I think, satisfy everybody.
We can't respond or take action,
That's
but
fine.
you can leave it with Dolores and she'll make sure that each one of us get a copy.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address us? Sure, sir. Go ahead and step up to the podium, please.
Hello, my name is Craig Gilbert versus the City of Willits. What you did to me was you discriminated against me, and it says right here, right to appeal. Persons who are dissatisfied, you didn't give me a right to appeal, not one bit, no. And I'm not gonna retaliate against you, and I'm not mad at you because of your incompetence and your ignorance and your ethical and moral is dead. But what I am going to do, we're going to have a case settlement here at the end of the month, and if we can't settle, I'm going to protest out here, and I've already got 200 signs made up, and here are some of the signs that I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be giving away cotton candy and clown noses. This one. Fake policy liars. You came up with a policy that you didn't have, and then you didn't stick with the policies that you did have. Probably because you thought I didn't have no money for a lawyer in order to fight this. How about this one? H2O is essential, not optional. Who died and made you God? Got water? You turned my water off for no reason whatsoever. And the person that gave me the letter that you wrote me that was total fraud with no policy on it, no policy number. It says policy but no number. No date on it and no signature on it. He told me that he's going to make sure that I don't get adverse possession. And that's what he did. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be out there protesting. How about this one? You tried living 408 days without water. How about this one? Willits ignored governor's orders, and Mr. Bender told me we don't care about the governor's orders. How about this one? Inmates on death row, they have access to water. Why can't I? How about this one? Show me the policy. You don't have a policy. You come up with it out of thin air that you did and you didn't. How about this one? What ordinance, what right, what constitution? Now I have the right to protest out there, and I did it before. I did it with that bad cop down there in Ukiah. And I came by here with the flyers, and did any of you show up to protest about a bad cop? No, because you're probably all with him because he has a badge. And they gave him 2 months for what he did, or 2 years probation. Anybody else would have got 30 years. How about this one? Ask me about their invisible policy. How about 408 days without water
Sir,
due to the city's spite of city?
sir, thank you for your
How about-
comments. Your time is up.
Well, you haven't seen the clown ones yet.
Your time is up, sir.
Okay, my time's up here.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the council? Sir, your
Everybody
time
a clown
is
nose here because I'm going to be giving
Sir,
out clown nose.
your time
There you
is
go.
up.
There's a couple more just for you.
Sir, your time is up. I'm going to
I'm
ask
outta
you.
here.
Okay, your time is up.
You'll be seeing me at the protest.
Is there anyone
Thank you.
else from the public that would like to address us on an item that is not on the agenda?
Clown Town, USA.
You would? Go ahead, sir. Go ahead and step up to the podium, and if you wouldn't mind, stating your name for the record.
Tobin, that's T-O-B-I-N. Last name is Steiskal. It's S-T-E-I-S-K-A-L. Library assistant, Willits Branch Library, vested pension with the Mendocino County Library System since December of 2018. I wanted to comment specifically on an item that's not on the agenda, talking about the Little Lake Fire Protection District and how important it is for the voters, those whom are registered to vote, to do such, to pass the bond, to continually fund those city emergency workers. More specifically, as a member of the Service Employees International 1021, a week and a half ago I was in Sacramento and we shut down the Sheridan Grand for 2 hours. The Sacramento Firefighters Union stood in solidarity with the workers for a living and minimum wage. And obviously, I'm not sure if the Little Lake Fire Protection District is part of any union, but the Sacramento firefighters feel that a living wage is very important. And our union, SEIU 1021, as of a Zoom meeting yesterday with over 2,500 leaders of the SEIU 1021, we got to talk with Governor Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic ticket. He said he didn't even need his union card because he was a teacher. It's very obvious that our union and our union members support extending bonds to fund emergency service and fire protections and to extend those taxes and services to unincorporated areas within Mendocino County. And that's just a little note on a city council meeting update, but it is not specifically itemized on the agenda for the board to take further action. So I'm just saying that the union kind of endorses very, very good bonds. How much do I have left?
About a minute and 20 seconds.
All right, if I'm not here for number 9, because I might have to go, I will just talk more specifically about Willits economic localization. Moreover, now specifically the Farmers Market Association is something that the Willits Branch Library, the Ukiah Branch Library, the Round Valley Public Library, the Fort Bragg Public Library, the Point Arena/Coast Community Public Library, the Bookmobile as part of the Mendocino County Library System, and also a satellite branch that the Willits Branch Library staffs with volunteers in Laytonville has just opened up. So in an articulate, very literate response to what environmentalism means to me, not being from here, born and raised, not in Blackfoot, Idaho, Bannock Memorial Hospital in 1979, it does not exist anymore. Unfortunately, there was no land recognition whatsoever by the city, county, state, or educational institutions when they chose to level that building. So I would support the recommendations made in public comment that you can save grass without contracting out to granite and paving over that grass. It's a simple answer. You got to save our environment.
Thank you for your comments. Is
No
there-
problem. Thank you, Sabrina,
You're welcome.
for the recognition to speak.
Is there anyone else from the public? Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm probably your newest resident here in Willits, California. I'm happy to be here. Just relocated from Reno, retired law enforcement officer 30 years, so I grew up in a small town. I'm happy to be here. I want to get involved in the community. The only thing I want to say is everybody's talking about this granite, and I heard it at the forum. What about the vacant lot across the street for a place for farmers market? I'm just throwing it out there, but I'm just happy to just introduce myself to the community and looking forward to getting involved in here. Thank you for your time.
Sir, what's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't hear. Stuart Hanty, Handte,
Thank you.
transplant from Reno.
Thank you for your comments as well. Anyone else from the public? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public communication. We've already received the presentation of the flags by the American... Can you mute Madge, please?
Tomorrow? Okay.
We've already received the presentation of flags by the American Legion Color Guard. Thank you, gentlemen. And I was going to say young lady. Young lady. Next on our order of business is a Community Emergency Response Team CERT presentation, but we've tabled that matter. They weren't quite ready for presentation, so that'll come back before you, likely in the beginning of the new year. The next item is the Little Lake Fire District monthly update. I don't believe we have anybody here this evening, but we did receive a letter from them. There are copies of it written on the back table there. Their fire department update: the association is gearing up for Halloween at Station 54. Staff is hoping the police department and other EMS services are going to be able to participate with a table for handouts for children. As of September 18th, 976 hours of group training have been completed and 568 calls for service. September's drills were salvage and overhaul and search and rescue. There was an EMT class on September 4th, reviewed AED and CPR protocols and practice, and they had 6 new volunteers applied to the Little Lake Fire. They're stating that their duty rig 5401 is currently repaired under warranty with transmission issues, however should have it back soon, and that their engine 5468 has been out on a strike team in Lake County. So we appreciate their update. Little Lake Fire Department is not under the jurisdiction of the City Council, but they are certainly a valuable partner, and we always appreciate their updates so that we can disseminate information to the public. All right, next we have an update from 3rd District County Supervisor John Haschak.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager, and Council. John Haschak, 3rd District Supervisor. So we had a meeting yesterday, and we started off with recognition of the 7th anniversary of the Redwood Complex fire, and with the 9 lives that were lost with that, and the threats certainly to the Willits area too were significant and terrifying. But with that, one of the things that the IT department has been working on was this microwave system. And so they sent a little note out to me for this meeting was, with the increased prevalence of natural disasters, a reliable and effective radio infrastructure backbone is crucial to ensure first response communications are clear and resilient. The completion of Phase 3 of the county's microwave radio replacement project replaces all the existing aging and out-of-warranty radio infrastructure throughout Mendocino County. This new hardware will ensure robust and resilient emergency radio communications throughout the whole of Mendocino County. So, it's we've had to go to eBay to get some of the replacement parts, and now those aren't even working. So this new system will ensure that we have proper and effective, resilient communication for whenever the next emergency happens. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. I've been working with the CHP to get some kind of traffic calming measures on Sherwood Road. The city has part of Sherwood Road, but there's lots of other parts that people are excessively speeding. And so they say that within the next week or two, they're going to bring in a radar trailer, that will show the speed of people's travel, so that will hopefully calm it down. If people have ideas about where those should be placed, please get in touch with me, because CHP wants to know, they have an idea, but they also want community input to that. There was a discussion yesterday at the board meeting about the Business Improvement District, and that's for the hotels in Mendocino County. Right now it's a 1% tax, and Visit Mendocino, which is the recipient of that money, wanted to continue on with this study that would increase the tax to 2% and also include some of the tourist places like the Skunk Train, the Botanical Gardens, all of those places that tourists spend money in Willits or in the county, and also wine tasting rooms. And so Supervisor Jurdy brought up that we should really have the buy-in from the cities before that goes to the, before we approve anything like that. And so it will be coming back to the cities to see what you think, because we want to make sure that the cities are in agreement with that before proceeding. So that should be coming to you in the near future, because we're looking for that feedback. We're also working on this noise ordinance, and you know, that's to create some kind of tool for sheriff's office and the deputies when they go out and respond to these raging parties, that they have some tools to work with instead of just asking nicely for people to turn the music down or whatever is happening. Let's see. We had also a meeting of the General Government Committee yesterday, and part of that is the Drought Task Force. And so it's due to the SB 552, and we have to come up with a, let's see, the drought resilience plan. So there's a couple people from the city there, Walter Colin and Scott. And so Willits was represented there, but it's really working together to figure out how we do interties and be ready for the next drought, which could be near, okay, and soon. And then MCOG, and I don't know if Councilwoman Connie was going to talk about it. Are you going to?
I will, but you go ahead and like to hear your version.
Oh. Okay, well, we approved $55,000 to do a study of the feasibility of doing a sales tax, and at what level of sales tax that the people of Mendocino County can approve for transportation issues such as road maintenance. And this would just be in the unincorporated areas of the county. But really we need, you can see that the county roads are in poor shape. And so the only way we can do that is to get some kind of tax. And if we got a tax, if the people approved it, then we'd be a self-help district and we could get more state aid. So that will be, you know, in the works. And then, let's see, the museum. And we're working, you know, we're still working on this transition plan. The museum had a great activity last Saturday. They're also going to do this activity up in Laytonville at their cemetery this weekend on Sunday afternoon. You know, the stories about some of the historical people who've lived in Laytonville. So those are just things that I see the museum really reaching out to the community. We're working, the county is working with the museum to make that transition to a nonprofit really happen. Okay, and that's it. If there's any questions.
I have a couple. Did you have any?
I just wanted to thank you for pursuing the traffic calming for Sherwood Road. I know it's not in Willits City proper, but it affects so many city residents or city employees and people who are associated with Willits. It's something I hear about regularly from folks both in town and out in Brook Trails. So I appreciate your efforts to get CHP up there and hopefully get some traffic calming in place.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Askew, do you have anything?
I have nothing, thank you.
As far as traffic calming, is the road department looking at any roadway design? Because normally in the traditional sense, traffic calming would usually be a roadway design. And I know that that takes a while, but is that being looked at by the county?
Yeah, but, well, I've talked to Howard DeShield, Director of Transportation, about that several times. He wants to come up with a comprehensive plan for the county because he doesn't want to just do one-offs. But we've talked about kind of the rumble strips in the middle, you know, where there's solid yellow lines, something like that, so people wouldn't be passing, you know. And so there's different things that could be done but it has to be part of this policy according to Howard.
All right, and then another question was, are you in negotiation, is the county in negotiations with employees right now?
No.
Oh, okay, I was just curious.
Point of fact,
Hold on, sir.
I'm asking him.
I have a point of fact that corrects this, though.
So, all right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, and Strong, do you have any questions? Councilmember Strong, do you have any questions? No, okay, all right. You had mentioned about the tax and I just needed a clarification for the public. If that tax was to pass, would it be only on the unincorporated areas, or is it a sales tax?
The bid,
Yes,
yeah, it would be it's an additional tax, you know, just like the TOT. It's on
Okay.
top of the TOT at this point. So the TOT, the transient occupancy
Okay.
tax for hotels, motels is 10%.
so it's the
The
TOT that would
BID
increase.
is another 1%.
Okay.
They want to add another percent to that and include others besides just the hotels, motels.
And have the hotels and motels weighed in on are they for or against, or they haven't given any indication on where they stand on this tax?
No, they have a
Still at the
separate
beginning.
vote, right? And
Okay. So this
that's-
is still at the very early stages?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then I was just hoping for an update on 3 other issues. Animal care, has there been any movement or changes in terms of animal care in our community? We had talked, I know we've talked before previously about the need for expanded services. Specifically, when I talked to you last, we were talking about before there's a problem. So a lot of people had stated that, you know, that they can't find resources to get their animals sprayed or neutered, so that we don't have that after effect, or we minimize the after effect. I was just wondering if there's been any advancement with the van that provides those services.
Yeah, there has been, and, you know, we received a $100,000 grant for the caravan. You know, the overall it cost like $200,000 or so. But that's moving forward. They think that they'll have it this winter. The real issue is they need a vet and a vet tech to staff the caravan, and they don't have that at this point. So really, if anyone knows a vet who can kind of deliver those services on a part-time basis, that would certainly help. And anyone who's interested in being a vet tech, we need that to make that caravan work.
Okay. And then I know that it's been warm, but with the cold weather coming, is there any update on the homeless shelter? Is there any information you could give about that, or is that something that you can bring before us at the next month when you come? Just an update on the status of, you know, capacity, or any anticipated lack of capacity, or those types of matters?
Yeah, and we're going to do a workshop on homelessness at our January 14th meeting. And so we'll have a lot of information from all the providers of the services at that point. But I did hear that Social Services is working with the city of Willits on the Heads Up program. So I think there have been some meetings about that, and making sure that there's collaboration and information sharing between the different entities, like the police department and the social services and mental health. All of those are sharing the same information. That's what the Heads Up is about.
Thank you. And then the last one is, we talked before about identification of wells that are in the county's area. Has there been any movement with committees or conversation about trying to document where wells are at? I know that this particular year, water wasn't a main issue, but we all know that it's coming back again, and the city's been working really hard and diligent on water conservation and testing of wells and whatnot. And I'm just wondering if there's been any movement with the county in terms of planning.
Yeah, that's a great point for this drought task force. And so I will certainly bring that up. I haven't heard any more information about what the county has as far as documenting where all the wells are in the valley or outside of the city limits, but part
I
of the
just don't want, I don't want it forgotten because
Yeah.
we talked about it before and I know that, this year's, sir, I need,
Mr. Haschak is done. I have back
Sir?
for 10 seconds.
sir,
Here's the classification committee negotiating.
I'm gonna, I don't want to, but I will have to ask you to leave if you can't refrain from speaking. I was asking him a question. So when the task force meets next, will you pose that question and then bring back some additional information to us?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
All
And
right.
maybe if I could just,
Go ahead.
I think that the point Mr. Tobin is trying to make is that, I said that all of our contracts are completed. We have agreements on all the contracts. There is just ongoing human resource relations with the unions about job classifications and some of those issues.
Wages and classifications, correct.
So anyway, I think that's the point he's making.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. This is an agenda item, so the public does have an opportunity for 3 minutes to ask any questions or make a comment. But
At what time?
right now, but I am also going to remind you for any item that you have to follow the rules of decorum. Okay. So at this time, you have 3 minutes.
Again, my name's Tobin Steiskal, SEIU Local 1021, part of 4 other co-workers at the library system, as well as Patrick Hickey, the union representative for the SEIU 1021 Mendocino County Chapter. February, we got the committee together of workers who wanted to change classifications within the library system and change the wage scale. We planned off the clock for 4 months. It's on my Google Drive right now. We had a meeting with our HR department at the end of July. We proposed a new wage scale and a further examination of the classification system because, yes, the board can't do anything about it until the union acts through HR. Patrick Hickey specifically said at the end of July when we met with the 2 representatives from HR, Cal Sadern and another individual, as well as our library administration, Mendocino County Librarian Director Melissa Hannum, as well as Barbara Chapman, the Administrative Services Specialist of the Mendocino County Library System, in an effort since February that all 3 parties have been appraised of. We have been working on these matters, drafting them, and over 70%, of all library staff said library assistants don't even make as much as fast food workers now in Mendocino County. There's only library technician above that, and then above that is you got to get your master's degree. Now, HR conceded at the end of July that, yeah, we're working on the classifications as well as our administration because we had been transparent and working with them on our committee since February. But in August, HR sent a letter back to respond to our official proposal. They rejected our new wage scales. They're using a different metric. Library assistants still can't make $20 an hour, even in a step 5 salary grade. Absurdity on how cost of living has increased in Mendocino County, in Willits specifically, for the over 800 county workers in this county system as a whole. Fortunately, HR is working with us. Our library administration is working on the classifications, but the fault lies with HR because we use the wrong metrics. Unfortunately, the metrics that need to be used is when you go to Safeway, each and every individual on the board. It's simple that cost of living since the pandemic, and even though Donald Trump gave us checks that we all cash, irregardless, cost of living has skyrocketed. And for those workers who value this county and work at our libraries, we need to change the wage scales. They're already working on the classifications, and I can show you that if you'd like. Because it's always been transparent since February of '24.
Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Would anyone else like to address us on this item for a presentation? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Haschak, for giving us a presentation. We appreciate the monthly meetings to come and apprise the community of what's happening at the county level. Next item before us is the enactment of ordinances. We have none before us. So then we move on to the consent calendar. We have one item on there, the minutes for September 25th, 2024.
I so moved.
Second.
All right. Stransky motioned and Vice Mayor Gonzalez made a second. I'll open it up to the public. Does anyone want to address us on the minutes of the prior meeting? All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Connie?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes,
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes, the motion carries. Moving on to monthly activity reports. We have no activity reports to review. They're usually in the second meeting of the month and will be on the 23rd. This evening, we have no commissions, agencies, and authority business before us. So I'll move to the city manager reports and recommendations and turn it over to City Manager Bender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. The one business item that I'm presented for your pleasure tonight, is the ratification of the agreement between the City of Willits and the management unit within our organization. So it's a very relatively straightforward proposal that is before you. The financial component is limited to a COLA that is capped at 3.5, and for the benefit of the council, that was the number that was presented and adopted and approved by the Willits Police Officer Association when they did the negotiations.
All right. Does anybody have any clarifying questions or comments on this item? All right. Anybody from the public want to address us on this item?
My name is Robin Leeler. I would like a little more information about, it sounds like it's a raise for a management unit, but something was mentioned about the police department. Could someone just clarify that for me? Thank you.
Certainly. Are you able to, do you want me to recap or?
I can answer the question, and if you
Okay.
want to support, I appreciate that. So yes, this is the results of negotiations that took place. The current management unit agreement expired at June 30th of the last fiscal year. We've been in negotiations with the unit. We covered a lot of ground, and basically this agreement is a 1 year. We're coming off a 3-year term. And the reason for a 1 year is a couple things. The other component that is associated with this agreement is we're going to be looking at a pay-for-performance provision in the next agreement that would be presented to the council at the end of next fiscal year or the very start, with a little lag, unfortunately. This would be retroactive. So that would be the unit's proposal. We went through it, and basically this is the agreement that we have settled on. Now, the first unit, we have 3 represented or bargaining units within this organization. The first one that was presented for the council's consideration, and they acted on it, was for the Willits Police Officer Association. They had a 3-year term that expired at the end of the fiscal year. We made a conscious effort to do that one first, and that one also had a COLA increase of 3.5%. Cost of living.
I'll let you have more time since most of it was an explanation.
I'm still confused about how many people does this apply to? You talked about 3 units. How many people are we talking about? Does that include your job also?
No, it does not.
Okay.
I've been, when my contract was renewed by the council under performance evaluation that was conducted early this year, the request I made was to separate myself, so I am not subject to a COLA increase, and this prevents any conflict of interest, so I can negotiate and present the findings to the council.
Okay.
So there are 9 individuals associated, 9 staff members or positions identified in our organization that this management proposal would accommodate.
So these are 9 people within a management unit?
These are department heads and program managers.
Department heads, okay, thank you.
Bargaining unit.
Okay.
And the COLA is the cost of living
Right.
increase. Okay. All right, just clarify. All right, go ahead.
So just to be clear, the 3 bargaining units, there's the Police Officers Association, which deals with the police. There's the management unit, which deals with our department heads and managers. And then there's the IBEW, which is...
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
And that covers many of the employees in wastewater, water, and public works. And they're all under those bargaining units so that they can get their best results in negotiations for pay and classification.
And then our city manager and assistant city manager are separate from both of those. Or those 3. All right, any other questions or comments from the public? All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back up here and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommended action.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and I will call for the vote.
Before you take the vote, your city clerk wanted a clarification or a slight change in the wording of the resolution.
Okay.
It states on the resolution right now that it was effective July 1, 2024 and June 30th, 2025. I believe the "and" should be changed to through
Correct.
June 30th, 2025.
I'll amend my motion to reflect that change.
Yes.
All right. We have a motion and a second to amend the word "and" to "through." And the motion is to adopt a resolution ratifying the negotiated agreement between the management unit and the City of Willits effective July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 at a projected expense of $40,247 for salaries and authorizing the city manager to sign. We have a motion and a second, and I will now call for the vote.
Councilmember Connie?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes, the motion carries.
Thank you.
The floor is still yours.
Yes, so as you can see in the audience, Mr. Kohler is not here, so I have to do my best on these projects. The 23 pavement preservation is basically done, except for a couple of dig outs that still are outstanding. The contractor has to work out a revised schedule to return to the various project sites to complete. There's a couple of smaller items that need to be done associated with the project, some curb repairs and a new 88 ramp or apron adjacent to a sidewalk. So that's outstanding. Yes.
So we've been hearing this for several council meetings now, that 2023 is almost done, has
Yep.
just a couple items left on the punch list.
Yes.
Is there a timeline, and will it be completed before the rains come?
I've been promised that it was going to be done before the rain. The latest update I received was on Monday afternoon, and that's what I'm providing to you right now.
Okay.
Boudelier was the contractor. I believe they got tied up on another project, and some of the punch list items is a subcontractor that we've been also waiting to come back and utilize their time more effectively when we can time them to other projects.
Okay, but they're coming back.
Yes. We are retaining payment on certain items, so they know they need to complete.
Okay, thank you.
Did Boudelier move on to other projects within the city or other projects
This
in
is the only
general?
project they want in a contract for the city, with the city. They have some other projects.
Okay.
Pavement 24, basically all the heavy lifting, literally the pavement has been completed. Once again, there is some striping that has to be done. We're looking to get that scheduled for next week. So please, the public, when you come across a freshly laid asphalt, standard traffic conditions still apply even though it's not striped or identified in pavement markings. So like a stop bar or something like that, you still have to adhere to traffic controls.
I have a bit of an awkward question, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. In the Transportation Committee and before the council, we heard that there was going to be some work done on Commercial Street at the digouts, but no real information. And as that project moved forward, it appears that most of the work on Commercial Street took place in the 200 block. And because of my somewhat conflict of interest in wanting to stay outside of what was taking place on Commercial Street, I was unaware of exactly the extent of the work that's been taken place there. I still don't fully understand why the 200 block was addressed and not other areas of it. So I thought rather than ask privately, the best way to handle this is just to ask in the public forum, why was only the 200 block, what was there that needed specifically to be addressed?
Okay.
Because I don't know.
Okay, so basically working with the engineering team at SHN, we looked at, this goes, the scope of the project was literally 6 to 8 months back. We looked at the pavement condition ratings that we had already identified, and SHN working with city staff, we looked at the worst condition, not only surface, but subsurface substrate that we needed to address. It was determined that the 200 block was the most problematic, that we had. Essentially, dig outs is a temporary measure to save the surrounding surface pavement. It's not the perfect solution. Those areas were identified. If we didn't address them, further deterioration of the adjacent pavement was going to give away. So those are the ones that needed immediate attention, and that's why those were identified for action.
Are there any other spots that are still going to be addressed as part of the Pavement Preservation 2024 along Commercial Street? Or is that the only section in 2024?
I believe we accomplished what was in the original scope.
Okay.
Yes.
So, years ago, this council set a policy essentially where we said that we wanted to prioritize underground utilities before paving streets. We didn't want to pave things that were then going to have to be dug up to go back and repair sewer and water. So the emphasis over the last few years has been towards
Complete streets.
complete streets. So getting to the underlying problems before we slap new pavement on things. In the meantime, we've done things like the pavement preservation projects each year, which are to keep decent streets in good repair so they don't get to those bad points that many of the other streets that we're tackling the biggest problems are on. And my understanding is that dig outs are similar to pavement preservation, where we're essentially trying to stave off the worst kind of collapse before we get back to that. We're buying time. Yeah. However, I would suggest that in the mind of most community members, dig outs set an unreasonable expectation because there's this big amount of activity that comes along with dig outs, and people think, oh good, this street's going to be fixed. Yeah. And then the dig out gets dug out and sort of dealt with to buy us time, and then all the heavy equipment leaves and the street's really not better to most people's eyes. It's better certainly to our public works crew because they know the details of it, but for the average person, we drive along the road and go, well, this is still crummy. So I sort of feel like maybe we need to rethink our approach to dig outs, and if we're going to continue to do them, we need to do a much better job letting the public know what the reason for them is and help manage the expectations, because I think this summer what we really saw was a lot of frustration in the community that dig outs don't lead to finished streets.
Okay, just for clear, complete streets doesn't relate to it's when we plan improvements that look at all means of transportation, from pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles, so it's not associated with resurfacing. Okay. Noted, Basically, one of the reasons why we are trying to pivot away from relying on dig outs for exactly that reason, but it stretches our limited resources.
I get that, but my point is that if we're going to continue to do dig outs in the coming years before we can tackle the biggest problems,
Yeah.
I think that we really do need to do a better job of managing the public's expectation and getting out ahead of it before those dig outs start, to make sure the public knows, hey, you're going to see this disruption on the street. It's not finished when it's done and everybody rolls away. We're going to come back in X time frame to really address it. But otherwise, I really think that what happens is people think, what did they waste all that time and money for? It's just as bad as it was. So and I know that's not what's happening, but to the general public, that's what it looks like. And I'm trying to give you the feedback from the community that we need to approach it differently.
And obviously, I appreciate that. What we have done over the last couple of years has been very aggressive. We have a large collection of streets that are deficient in their ratings on their surface conditions.
A lot of deferred maintenance.
Yes, and unfortunately, asphalt keeps going up each year in price. We're trying to do the best we can. We are going to be updating our rating, overall rating, because it is several years out of date, and we have to document the new streets that we have completed to knock them off the list, and we can move forward. Yes, so and staff will hear the concerns that you have raised regarding dig outs. Like I said, it's a stopgap. It stabilizes the street. If we wanted to do what we really wanted to do on East Commercial, it would have been a complete street approach. Sidewalks, pedestrian facilities, traffic calming, speed reduction. You're looking at a multi-million-dollar. We're not there yet. A lot of those elements were identified in the East Commercial Street Corridor Master Plan, and we're looking at grant opportunities in time to implement those provisions. So we'll see what we can do regarding that notice. We're learning. We know we need to do a better job. We're looking at internal controls on how we can get messages out and be more effective on what our intents are, our intent of projects.
Thank you.
And ensuring that the contractor keeps any neighbors or business owners in the community that are impacted by the construction abreast of the fact that there will be impacts. I know I've already shared my concerns about having not been informed at any level, even as a business owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So also I want to comment that 24 pavement and underground utilities project, some of it is overlapping, and we have received a lot of comments regarding this segment of State Street.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. We heard, and staff will be presenting at the October 23rd meeting a proposal to mobilize Argonaut to resurface the street. We have funding. I've been working with Finance Department. We can pull funding aside. They're already mobilized. We can have the work done if we get approval by the beginning of November, middle of November. And it wouldn't be sidewalks or any of the pedestrian components. It will be literally about 2 to 3 feet from each edge of curb. So it would be the main travel portion of State Street.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So just to clarify for the public, we had multiple areas around town in the last couple of weeks where underground utilities were being addressed. So the sewer and water main lines, the oldest steel sections of main line that we're trying to get rid of. And the idea was that each of those areas was going to be attacked, have the underground utilities replaced and repaired, and then we were going to patch the streets back. This wasn't a street project, it was an underground utility project. However, what we found in many areas, including State Street, was that patching was not going to be sufficient afterwards. So what Brian is saying is that he's going to bring forward to the council an idea to go ahead and finish that portion of State Street that was so disrupted by the underground project and do a full paving. However, in my mind, this is going to set up some tension with other parts of town that also have these projects that are going to say, why doesn't my street get its complete paving done? We can't do all of it at once. We don't have the money to do all of it at once. We don't have the staff or the resources to do all of it at once. So what Brian and I talked about in my weekly meeting with him today is why was State Street chosen to be presented as a completed project? And essentially, its nature as a key route to the high school as people try to escape going through the traffic light at Commercial Street, its access to the park, to the schools, to the college, all
Fire
of those
district.
things, the fire district, makes it a candidate for a sped up timeline for having it completed.
The other circumstance was that State Street in this segment literally did not have a proper substrate. It was millings and a thin cover, and unfortunately, the equipment, we had a water break or water main break that kind of made more extra or heavier equipment out there than was originally planned, just kind of deteriorated the soft edges. So we're going to come in, restructure the road, resurface, and we were looking to do that probably within a year or two out in our rotation. We're just moving it forward.
And those other streets that had their utilities fixed will still be on the rotation for the coming year and years. They're not going to be forgotten.
No, no. Oh, and one other thing regarding State Street, I just confirmed with the contractor, they are going to come out and just do more temporary measures just to stabilize the current conditions, do some more compacting, and just kind of level it out a little bit until we get direction from the council on how you want to proceed with a resurface.
And then there was a request to put down some water to help with the dirt. Stransky?
There are several places that they rechecked the utilities and got rid of the steel water pipes, sewer water and whatever. But they're too small to put sidewalks in. So are we just going to pave those and that's it, and no sidewalks? Because they're really small.
Once again, if we're looking, let me just clarify, as I said earlier, State Street is just going to be a resurface, and it's going to be presented to the council. As we rotate out into 25, 26 programs, we'll look at the streets that we identify for resurfacing if they need to have the curb, gutter, sidewalk, ADA capacity put in. It adds expense. If we don't need to do it, we'll just do the resurfacing. But right now, our intention is to cover as much of the vehicle access on streets and the pedestrian components as well. That's a commitment that staff has given to the council through your goal setting. If a street is identified for resurfacing, rehabilitation, and there isn't a sidewalk, we'll have to have a decision if we want to do that.
Go ahead.
If this comes back to us, will we be able to do this before the rains?
Yes.
Or will it? Okay.
So right now, the schedule for the patching and the finishing of 24 Pavement Preservation project, it is the end of October, early November. Because right now, the underground utilities, they're going back and doing all the leak tests. So before they can put any pavement down, they want to make sure all the joints and the valves are tight and operable. Like we said, we don't want to surface and then have to rip it up to fix something.
All right.
Unfortunately, it happens though.
And underground utilities?
Like I said, we're deep in the process of doing the leak testing on the laterals. We do appreciate the patience of property owners who have been subject to a lateral replacement. It is actually worthwhile. This project has been going, as we identified to the council, it's a very complex project. We make the excavation cut. Literally, we have a water sewer line within inches. And now that is hand digging. There is crew members, not city crew, but the contractor, their members are within the trenches doing handwork. And that's what complicated things. But they have done a great job in tight confines. We did receive approval from the previous council meeting to van and mural lane resurfacing, which was an additive to the project, additive alternative. That is going to come in at the presented price of $30,000. And that's looking at early November too. All right. Main Street fiber optic. I don't have a lot of details. They've been Our crew has gone out there and told them they had to do some of the patching and sealing work was not to a standard that we appreciated, so they had to go back and redo some of those areas, some of the excavations.
And is that completed?
On our portion of Main Street, yes. At least the initial boring, trenching, they still have to come back and run the cables through.
When you say our portion, you're talking about then the rest of Caltrans?
Yes.
Okay.
As they run the linkage out to 101.
Yes, they finished the rest of it.
And then the PG&E sidewalk project. It is gaining momentum. The crew is out there pretty heavily. It's a good project. We're still working through some of the coordination with it. I talked to Allison Talbot, our PG&E. They're looking to do kind of a grand opening event later or early next year when the project's all done. And they want to tie together with the Hale Creek Trail, potentially a opening ceremony or construction activity at the Great Redwood Trail unit that is at East Hill. At least tie it in together. And then we're also looking to do a city project of laying in sidewalk on the east side of Bechtel Road essentially from the fire station southward to East Hill. So we would have significant connectivity in that neighborhood.
And that would take place during what month or?
PG&E is, they have 2 phases of that project. They're looking to get it done early next year, probably February, March, probably February if the weather holds. And then we need to scope that sidewalk installation. We have talked about it, we have initial cost estimates, but we don't have a project yet to present.
And it was something that when we met with the Conservation Corps that they said that would be
It would be
of
beneficial
interest
for
to-
that whole neighborhood, the
Yes.
hospital, the residential
Yeah.
area, the connectivity, the Hale Creek Trail. It is much needed.
So are you thinking that that city portion from the firehouse to East Hill would be a project for next construction season?
Potentially, we heard the council concerns about trying to get projects tracked accordingly so we're not bumping up against school schedules or other events. Knowing that we already have initial concept for that project, we'd like to get it to the council early in 2025 so we can let it for construction as soon as possible.
All right, and with
That's what I
that
have.
was, thank you. That was the city manager's report. Is there anyone from the public that would like to ask a clarifying question or make a comment on the presentation? Go ahead, sir. You have 3 minutes.
I'm Charles Cully, and I live on the dead-end part of State Street. Is that going to get paved as well?
You're talking about here on the east side?
The dead-end part of State Street?
Yes, sir. The proposal that we have received from the contractors would, right now, it's tentatively set to go from the intersection of Humboldt and State to the very end, the far eastern edge to where it basically terminates. But we may put an additive on there and go from the intersection of Humboldt to Main. So the other end of you.
Okay.
So your end would be addressed. Okay.
Any other questions?
I think Madge has one.
Madge, 1 second. Madge, 1 second. We have a member of the public, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
I'm Kathy Boudelier, and I live on the corner of State and Marin. They left it worse than it was before, and it was not good before that. It was one patch on top of another. Now there's nothing but holes along that way, so it'd be very nice if we could get it done before winter.
We're working on it. We heard the residents, we saw the conditions, we're addressing our needs, yes.
If my son left it that way, I'd be boom.
All right. Councilmember Strauss?
Yes, is my audio on?
Yes.
2 things, and given the amount of time this is taking and how much other business we have, you could wait until next council meeting if you'd like. but on your reports, I would like to hear an update on the silverization project at the wastewater treatment plant, and also any progress on dealing with the dead hotel. But you don't necessarily have to do it tonight because time is running out on us here.
We're okay on time. Do you want to address
I
it?
can.
Want to give us a quick update?
Yes, so the solar project for both City Hall and wastewater treatment facility has gained a lot of momentum. We have been working hard on internally with Lonnie Shine, Davey. I saw Davey here.
He was here.
Davey Bowles and Walter Kohler has been working with our consultant Sysico. Basically, geotechnical work has already been completed down at the field portion of the parking lot to look at the subsurface conditions to support the engineering and construction activities that are going to be necessary to install the units and the components. We are working with Sysico in their coordination with PG&E on some of the upgrades and just kind of fine-tuning the project components. It is fast-tracked. We're looking to get majority of the work done literally by a year from now. Once again, a good note or a happy note on this project, we've been awarded the 10% extra. So right now we're potentially online for the 30% rebate or refund at project closeout, and at least a 10% on that portion of the project. For some reason they split it between the wastewater facility and City Hall. We don't know the logic. There was a third party that was acting on our behalf on submitting the application to the feds, but that is a good thing. So it's starting to fall into place. It's moving ahead pretty aggressively. And sorry, Davey, you just walked out. We were talking about the solar project.
Apologize, timing's everything. Yeah, so they are starting design right now. So they finished their geotech about 3 weeks ago. So they finally got their report together to get that to the engineer to start design work. That's scheduled for the next about month and a half. They have a 30, 60, and 90% design component at stages to, give to us and check in and make sure they're in the right state. Overall, it's a very simple design. It's kind of just, once you've designed one block of it, it's pretty much, it's a straight line of solar panels, so it's not complicated. We're in negotiations with PG&E right now to design the final connection. There's two options we can go through, and we're basically just, right now we're trying to decide what's the best, most cost efficient for the city.
And those, the connection discussion is related. Right now, we're really focused on the field portion.
Correct.
City Hall is relatively simple. We already did a massive effort with solar here a year or so ago. So we're going to look to use the same contractor. They have the experience and the knowledge. They know what's on the roof, and they know their way around.
Yeah, the City Hall component is only 6.5 kilowatts. It's smaller than most residential systems. What that is that was our maximum capacity from our NEMS 2.0 application. So as you guys are aware, we had the grant money for the previous solar portion. And so what we did is we basically, when we did the NEM 2.0 application, we got as much as we could in that application. And so this is just making up the balance of that, the difference between what the grant could pay for and this project. So that's why it's such a small component.
I'm not sure that the public fully understands what we're talking about, and what we're talking about is a solar project that would power the sewer plant and other facilities within the city of Willits, and the array would be placed over the parking area at the sports complex.
Not quite correct.
And more. Go ahead, clarification.
It would offset basically power generation.
Offset is a proper word. Thank you for the clarification.
We're not going to be Ukiah and basically provide power to facilities.
No, I think that's an important clarification. Yes. I do appreciate that.
So it is and this was tagged or teamed with the council's consideration of the utility rate increase for wastewater sewer processing. It is to hedge our bets over potential PGE increases over the life of the project. There are significant savings. The overall project is about $4.3 4.2?
I believe it's closer to 4.2 million.
Yep. Our portion of the project, with all the rebates and refunds that are on the table, we would be looking at overall cost out of pocket of about 2.7. And the other, like the other half there, that 2 plus, would be coming from the refunds and, of course, the tax credits that we are looking to pursue.
30% tax credit and the 10% low-income bonus.
Yes.
So we're paying 40% of it.
What was the other item? that-
The Van Hotel, and I probably will direct this directly to Davey. The condition, or the status of the Van Hotel.
The current, so currently we're at, so as you know, we wrote a letter of substandard conditions to the Van Hotel owners and an order to abate. We've been in contacts with them. They have retained an attorney. We've been in negotiations with them as far as the timetable and scope of repairs. We are currently setting up a meeting for next week with our city staff and their attorney and the property owners. And, mainly the point of discussion is the lack of progress. So we are headed in the direction of them not fulfilling their commitments of the abatement order, and, we will hold them to account. This is a marathon. We will reach the end of it, but we're making progress. Is that the rest of the question? I didn't hear the actual question. I apologize,
No, that was
Matt.
just the update on the Van
Okay,
Hotel.
thank you.
I just want to get back to, we had a good discussion tonight on street conditions, resurfacing, and how the city presents projects for the council's benefit. I just want to let the public know that the council has a sitting committee on transportation, and these items come up at that meeting. So if there's any opportunity that you want to join the discussion when we dive a little deeper into the details and programming of street repairs, you're more than welcome to attend. They're open meetings, and I know, I don't want to speak for the council members, but staff definitely appreciates that public input, and it helps us guide project development.
Councilmember Connie and I sit on the Transportation Committee, and we found that when community members come, it's really an opportunity to dig into the nitty-gritty of what are the concerns in the community, and give staff an opportunity to problem solve them before they come before the formality of council. So you have a transportation need, please come to our meeting once a month. That is typically the last Thursday
Our
of
next
each month.
meeting is on October 24th.
October
At 9 a.m.
Typically the fourth Thursday at 9 a.m. here.
Yes.
And it's open to the public. Agendas are posted online as well at City Hall.
They're fun.
All right.
That's what I have. Madam Mayor and council members, thank you.
Thank you. All right, for our next order of business, which is the presentation of the proposed park improvement located within Bud Snyder Park, I'm going to let the public know that because I have property within 500 feet, we asked the FPPC for a ruling, and 2 of us council members have property within 500 feet, so we won't be weighing in on this. There's no act, this is not for action, this is a presentation and direction, but in the spirit of ensuring that there is no conflict of interest, I'm going to go ahead and step out of the meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Vice Mayor Gonzalez, and then I'll return after we're done. And I've chosen not to participate during public comments, so you can just come and get me afterwards. Go ahead.
I have a piece of property on Main Street, which is 422 feet from the park, and I'm disqualified. Thank you.
Seems weird, but
And so, is there
You have to-
enough left to even vote on anything?
we're not voting tonight on anything.
And there are 3 of us to be able to give direction to staff after we hear from the public comment.
I would like to just clarify that the agenda, the second page of the agenda, item 9A, does identify this as an action item. And it technically is an action item and not merely a presentation, because staff is requesting that the council make comments that will become incorporated into the ultimate design of the project. And so action will be taken to the extent that those comments may direct how the project proceeds.
So we're going to start out with Dusty presenting, and then, I'm not sure if Davey will add in there, but then afterwards, we'll open it up to the public.
What did you say? They don't do that.
All right.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Gonzalez, council members. Appreciate the time tonight. So what's before you tonight is we've completed 30% preliminary designs for proposed improvements to Bud Snyder Park that are being funded by our Clean California Local grant that we received at the end of last year. And we're seeking public input and council direction before moving forward with final designs. There has, as council is aware, there's been a good amount of discussion and interest from the community on this matter. Some folks are not aware of the year and a half or so of effort that brought us to this moment. And so I did want to just start tonight's presentation by pointing out some of the timelines that provided direction for us to get to the point we have tonight. So I do want to just point out that really, and there's a lot of improvements that are proposed for the park. The pavilion especially has received some interest from the public. And Mr. Foley, the Farmers Market Director, he's not here tonight. He's provided a letter to the council providing the clarification on a few things. But really the pavilion was born when Mr. Foley came into my office in 2022. And the point of discussion was, hey, Dusty, the farmers market, I'm hearing a lot of folks are interested in coming back to City Park for obvious reasons. And I said, I hear the same thing, Michael. What do you think we can do to help? And he said, boy, without those trees, there's just not a lot of shade right now. And down in Davis, they have this pavilion, and it works really well for the farmers market. And I said, that sounds great. How much money do you got? I don't have any. And I said, I don't either. But that was the first spark that led to this idea of looking to bring that type of improvement specifically to Bud Snyder Park. And then in February of 2023, the Caltrans released notification of an opportunity to compete for a competitive grant series called the Clean California Local Grant Program. And what staff always kind of starts by doing is we look to see what the intent of the grant is. We try to understand, how competitive it is, because the reality is when you're putting your best foot forward with these grants, a lot of times you're spending hundreds of hours of staff time. And of course, Willits, small community, outstanding staff, but there aren't a lot of us, so we always got to be careful of where we prioritize our time. And again, in looking at it, it became clear that, a pavilion really meant the intent of the grant would help us potentially score higher, and again in this competitive grant series. And in checking back in with the director of the farmers market, it was understood that this was still something that were desirable and would be supported and including in our application. So at that point, we had a community open house over here in our community center. We tied it in with the land use element update open house. There's about 80 people that came through, and we had one of the tables sought input on improvements to all our parks, including Bud Snyder Park. And folks were given the opportunity to write down comments and post-its, and I'll show you some of that input. But it certainly is what was used to identify the improvements that ultimately were included in our grant application. So in April of 2023, we came to council. We showcased the input that we had received from that open house. We obtained some additional public input, And then ultimately, we had a resolution that was approved by council authorizing staff to go ahead and submit a grant application with the identified improvements. I also note that right at that time, the East Commercial Street Plan, which identifies improvements along the East Commercial Street corridor, including our parks, that was also just starting. And there was a public input session that happened on May 18th that further reinforced the improvements that were ultimately put forward in our grant application. The grant deadline was May 31st. We always submit it, the day before, but we got our application in, and in October of 2023, we were lucky enough to find out that we were one of the communities that was awarded almost $3 million, $2.772 million. And I kind of always put this in just to, show off the ability of Willits to compete on these statewide grant applications. It comes to the ability for the community to participate and provide input. It certainly comes down to staff being dedicated to their craft. But only 18% of the applications statewide got funded, and we were lucky enough to do that. I also noted on here that we executed a grant agreement with the state in December of 2023, signed by city, signed by the state. And that's acknowledging that we are receiving these funds and we are promising to complete the improvements that we identified in our grant application with those funds that we are lucky enough to get. These are some of the comment cards, just really quickly, that came from that first open house I was talking about. Yes, outdoor pavilion, yes, bring farmers market back to city park, shaded space for farmers market and picnic tables, soft landing turf under the play structures, pavilion for farmers market, bring the farmers back to city. You get the idea. Again, it was the initial request by the director for the pavilion, backed up by the support that we got in the public meetings. This was in our application. This identifies the park improvements for Bud Snyder Park. The big ticket items are the new restrooms, the pavilion, new playground equipment, but then also we have the picnic tables, the drinking fountain, wayfinding signs, kiosks, bike racks, anti-litter signs, and a few other improvements to the park there, a chess table and whatnot. These are the improvements that are being funded by the grant, and we agreed to complete. This is the 30% design that was completed by SHN. This shows the remodel of the existing restroom, the new pavilion, and then looking to replace, add concrete walkways, and then add a driveway into the pavilion. So I do want to point out that there have been some modifications that are shown on these 30% designs versus what we included in our grant application. Initially, the pavilion size that we showed in our grant application was 2,400 square feet. 60 by 40. In talking to the farmers market director, given their existing folks that they have there at the market, he asked if we could make it larger, and we think we can stretch the budget that was provided in the grant and go up to a 40 by 80 structure. That's what's shown in the designs. That's 3,200 square feet. You'll see that in the grant application, we showed the pavilion being located in the center of the northern grassy area within the park. Staff is recommending to shift that towards the northeast corner of the park. The purpose being to not break up the middle of the green area as much and interrupt that space. And then also recognizing that we want the driveway there to support staff being able to access the pavilion for maintenance. We understand it would be a benefit for the farmers market so that they can allow their vendors to go in there and set up and then drive out. And then could also be useful for other potential users as well. And then it also reduced costs by not having to extend the driveway as far. Then we did look at the cost of replacing the existing bathrooms, and that was, we found that we didn't have enough of a budget to support that. The bathrooms are not in bad shape, and so the recommendation is to go ahead and remodel the existing bathrooms, new fixtures, new flooring, and then also put on a new facade roof that'll match the design of the pavilion. We also had a request, again, from the director of the farmers market to provide a storage area so that they could put tables and other equipment that supports the farmers market and not having to bring it back and forth every time. It would also be made available, of course, to the city and other potential users as well. And then maybe a little bit more minor, locate the water bottle fill station at the bathroom rather than where it's shown on the map that went with the grant application towards the southern end of the park there. This is just elevation and a floor plan for the remodeled bath restroom. This is the 30% design for the new pavilion. That is, that photo on the bottom right is similar to what the pavilion would look like. Again, this was modeled off of the one in Davis. And I have pictures of that here a little bit later. It's not working for me here. Floor plan for the pavilion. So also part of what we wanted to showcase tonight was we're going to be replacing some of the playground equipment, adding new playground equipment. This is a survey that's been available for the community to participate in. It's been open for a number of months now. We have about 100 people that have responded to the survey. What this is showing is a number of options for large equipment, and there's the taller slide and the theme with slides, sort of the hodgepodge of improvements are the two leading vote getters. Then for the small equipment, everybody loves swings, and then climbing wall came in second. So we're in the process of pricing out the leading vote getters, and then also sort of understanding what we have room for in the park to maximize the amount of equipment. And then the theme, color scheme that got the leading vote getters was this yellow, green to blue theme. So we'll look to match that color scheme as voted on by the community. So recently, staff has received some concerns from the community. There is a number of folks that would prefer that the pavilion especially be made out of alternative materials other than steel and concrete, which is the current proposal. Davey Bowles, our building official, I'll invite him up here shortly, and he can provide some input on alternatives that we looked at, some of the conversations we've had with members of the public, and how we arrived at that determination to use those materials. There's the opinion that the pavilion is too big and takes up too much of the green space in the park. Certainly that pavilion is going over near the residential area, and understandably there's concerns about noise. And then Mr. Kameroff and others had some concerns about the proposed rubber playground surfacing, but then we also have the concern we received about improving the playground accessibility and safety. So in the grant, we talked about using a rubber surfacing throughout the playground to improve accessibility and safety. And then we heard at the last meeting that we discussed this topic, and it's come up under some public comments, but the about the idea of maintaining the wood chips. The issue with the wood chips is that you know, somebody in a wheelchair, if we're going to go through the effort of adding some more inclusive playground equipment, then obviously everybody needs to be able to access it. And wood chips doesn't allow for that to happen. What you're seeing here is staff looked at some additional options. This is a drone photo from a park down in Menlo Park. And what you see here is sort of a combination of wood chips and then a rubber surfacing that acts as the pathway, as well as is located in the fall zone of the equipment. So if it pleases council, this is an option that we could go with, where we would essentially use the rubber material to act as the pathway to the playground equipment, as well as be located around the fall zone of each playground equipment. And then it would leave you know, open patches where we would maintain the wood chips. So it would allow us to meet the recommendations that are found in the East Commercial Street Plan, and they're noted there on the bottom right of the slide. Trying to do a better job of showcasing the proposed pavilion footprint in relation to the park boundaries, including the green space. The total park area is about 75,000 square feet. As currently proposed, the pavilion would be 3,200 square feet. Green space within the park, and again, this is just kind of using Google Earth and taking some rough measurements, but is about 45,000 square feet. So based on those numbers, the green space reduction as a result of the pavilion would be approximately 7.1%. And then if you wanted to relate it to the total park area, it would be about 4.3%. As far as why that location was chosen, we have noted, my office actually sits and overlooks the park. And frequently when folks are using the green area, they chose to use that area along the west side of the park. This is a group that they're out there today too, playing volleyball. This is the folks that I want to call it like circus arts, but that they're a fun group, and they operated on this part of the park. And then there were some kids playing football the other day, and I was out there and I went ahead and snapped a picture. But it appears that the most underutilized part of the park is that northeast corner. I did want to show this. This is the farmer's market down in Davis, quite a bit bigger than what we're able to accomplish or what we're proposing tonight.
That green thing in the middle is their pavilion?
Yeah, they went long and skinny with it. Yeah. Again, right, residential area, it looks similar to the design we have with the open gables, like steel, concrete. And again, Davey will come up here and kind of help explain the logic of why we arrived at that for our choice of materials. And then just showing, again, out of the East Commercial Street Plan, that's the conceptual drawing that was included in that plan.
In the lower left?
Yes. And that. Yeah, and I think at this point, again, happy to answer questions, Vice Mayor, but I'd like to invite Davey up too to speak a little bit more on the material choice for the.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Gonzalez, council members, Davey Bowles, your building official. So in choosing the structure that we did for the pavilion, you know, we were going for, you know, to hit the major highlights of the grant, right? We have a finite amount of money in the grant opportunity, and we're trying to put as many components for the city in that as possible. And so one of the resources that we're using, obviously we're using a resource material which is steel and concrete, but the main resource here is money. We only have so much money. And so we did look at other types of structures, and I did talk to our structural engineer about this the other day, you know, and he forecast 2 to 3 times as much for like a wood structure. And so that basically puts that out of our price range, and that eliminates a lot of other components that we can provide to the community if we go that direction. And when you eliminate all those other components, the potential for us to score high enough to actually be awarded this money is reduced. And so, you know, putting our best foot forward to try and bring this money to the community, you know, those comes into the factor on why we chose these materials. Steel structure is one of the best. The steel elements for this type of structure are open, and you don't have, you know, a wood structure with like sheathing or anything to react with the with your shear forces and wind forces. Steel moments are the attachments are just, it's the right product for this application, and they come pre-engineered. They're made out of, you know, most of these materials are actually made out of a certain portion of recycled material already. But the one fact about steel, it is 100% recyclable. When that gets torn down in 1,000 years or however long it lasts, probably won't last 1,000, but you know, hopefully over 100. It'll be here before I pass away. That can go to the recycling plant in Ukiah and turn into another building or something else. You know, all that will be recycled. And fun fact, all that concrete, you can take it to Ukiah and NorCal, they will crush it. They will magnetically remove the steel rebar in that, and they will recycle that portion. And that concrete will either become concrete again or become road-based that, you know, potentially reuse under our streets again. So that structure is a reusable structure in our environment. It'll be recycled someday. And the wood components, we all think of wood as a natural product, and it's great, and it is a renewable resource. We can plant a tree again when we cut that one down and use it. But the one thing we can't do is when we actually use that wood in construction, we paint it and we stain it, we can't recycle it. We can reuse it for certain portions if you want to, you know, reuse it, but you actually go and try to compost it or recycle it, it can't be done because you can't mulch it, and you can't compost it because of the paint and other products that leach into the soil. So steel and concrete, I know they're kind of being talked about as kind of like a bad thing, but we use it in 90% of construction today. You know, we have a skate park that's made out of 1,000 yards of concrete. We have a lot of components in our system that we use every day, that we rely on, we drive on, we walk on. We're under a building that's made out of concrete and steel right now. So, you know, that product is, we can recycle it. The other one component that everyone wants to talk about is the material under it. So concrete as a material for the base of that. And so when we're looking at a material, we're also looking at the maintenance cost of that material. So, you know, a concrete slab we can pour, and we can weed whack around it, we can maintain against it, and it's, you know, all we have to do is pressure wash it every now and then, get the bubble gum off, and, you know, whatever gets spilled during the birthday party or whatever happens out there. Pavers and other materials when we put out there, that requires maintenance. And so as things settle, you know, you'll have pavers pop up, you'll have sand issues, you'll have other issues. Again, most pavers, if you're buying a manufactured paver, that is concrete. You know, so it's the same type of material, you know, or it's, you know, solid rock, right, which is another quarried mined product. So those require a lot of maintenance. We did have a discussion about a grass paver. So those are used on some pathways for, you know, mainly to stabilize, you know, roads when, you know, there's potential for cars to drive over and stuff. As far as being ADA accessible, it's really not in the grand scheme of things, because in order to maintain that, it has to be constantly mowed. There can't be any settlement in there. You know, any deviation over 1/2 an inch, you know, in a depression over 3/8 of an inch with your, you know, a chair wheel, that is non-compliant. And so as a city, if we're going to put a permanent building out there, and have, you know, the entire public out there be able to use it, we want to ensure that that's going to maintain its accessibility, and that we have a minimum amount of staff, and they are, I mean, you can see our parks today, they are really hard at it, taking care of our parks. But you add that and the ability for them to be on top of it and go out there and make sure that, you know, every week, you know, there's not a 3/8 gap or a lip, and we have a tripping hazard out there, and someone gets hurt, sues us. You know, those things are really important to think about, is that long-term maintenance is a big cost, and we really don't have that, you know, ability to keep adding and adding these things that need more and more maintenance to our facilities. We want to have a product that we can install and be able to use it, and basically not a lot of extra upkeep, you know. Same with the material, right? Wood, I mean, if you look at the pavilion down at our rec road, riddled with staples, there's carvings in it, you know, basically they're pressure treated poles. You know, it really is getting abused over the time, right? So that's kind of how we came to that product, and it wasn't a flippant, like, throw out a steel building. It's like, what's the best bang for our buck? We do think it's a fairly attractive pavilion. I think it looks better than Davis. We don't have anywhere near the resources of Davis, but I think we are going to, for the size of our town, I think we're going to put forward a nicer looking pavilion than they have. So I would be happy to answer any direct questions if anyone has any, if I didn't touch on it. But
Brenda, do you have anything?
There's a letter here from a community member. Hold on, there was something I wanted to. So a couple of these letters talk about the loss of the swath of green. And I wanted, and I heard that also at Candidates Night on Sunday, and I just wanted to address that the green we're talking about is turf grass. It's lawn that takes mowing and chemical fertilizer and water. It's not exactly the greenest of green materials, right? If we're really truly concerned about displacement of vegetation, why don't we think about doing some sort of offset, some kind of mitigation, the way they did with the bypass? We could put in a native plant garden somewhere in the city that would be a boon for pollinators. We could offset the loss of grass and still have a functioning pavilion that serves the community, the farmers market, as well as people who want to come and have a quinceañera or a birthday party with picnic tables under the shade. So I think that's something we should all think about, that the green that we're losing might not be the greenest green. That's a thought that I had.
Madge, do you have anything?
Yes, I'm going to ask about the material, for example, that Beth Radale suggested. Is that one that Davey is referring to that would not hold up, without a lot of maintenance? Because it sounded like a win-win, it's like we could have a pavilion but not a lot of concrete. So I wondered if that was one of the things that Davey has looked at and what he thinks about it.
I'm not familiar exactly with what she gave, but it looks like the Greenscape product. I apologize, I didn't get it.
I think she was advocating for a turf block material.
Yeah, so I would be happy to look at this product and let you know all the particulars about it and more in depth when I get a chance. But for the most part, these types of materials, these are stabilizers. So basically, under here, it's a plastic product. HDPE is usually what they're made of. High density polyethylene, which I would say is not as environmentally friendly as concrete, made out of a petroleum byproduct when you're making natural gas. But this would stabilize under the grass, and so what this does is it locks the soil together. And it doesn't let things settle. The problem with this is it's still on top. It's still turf, and so that grass, when you're trying to wheel through it, unless it's a tight knit, like a golf course grass, you're gonna sink in there more than 3/8 of an inch in your chair. And if you imagine people in a walker or something trying to go through our turf right now, it's a lot more difficult to walk. And that's what the product you would have there. And so the other component of this is, I know we're talking about this, but this is going underneath a building, right? We are gonna have a roof overhead. So to maintain this, you are gonna have sprinklers in your building, and you have to maintain that. And so as far as like keeping that alive and maintaining it, we're also planning on having vehicles come in there. So you'll be driving over sprinkler heads. And so maintenance is another issue that, potentially is difficult in this situation. This is a turf that would be under a building, under shade, as far as keeping it all alive. It's another potential issue. But I will take a look at this and I'll get back to you. A lot of these things are kind of false advertising on the internet. They sell you on this, like, hey, it's approved, it's ADA. Well, when you actually get down to the truth of it, it's a component of ADA. It's slip resistant, or it's this. It doesn't meet the full definition of all the requirements.
Question for Dusty. I know for the playground, one of the components that some of the public recommended was fenced in, so if you wanted to let your kids play, they weren't going to run out into traffic. Does this fence in the playground part of it?
Are you talking about adding additional fencing beyond?
Yeah, is that part of this?
For the
grant?
pavilion or for the playground
For
equipment?
the playground equipment, sorry about that.
We certainly can incorporate that into the design.
I think when we were doing these meetings over here, and some of the folks that showed up were concerned that, they didn't want to let Junior play and then have Junior run out into traffic, and maybe a little more fencing than what's there now.
Yeah, so the current improvement basically is within that fenced area. There was a potential, I think, to push one area kind of north to the pavilion, but right now what we're looking at is in that fenced area. But for certainly, if we moved it somewhere, that would definitely be
okay.
I had heard from several community members who came to talk to me who suggested that they would be more supportive of this project if it were made out of different materials, if the pavilion was wood, preferably local redwood. And I understand from your comments earlier that the cost would be significantly higher. Some of the folks who spoke to me said that they would be willing to chip in money or help fundraise to help augment the grant monies. Has anybody from the community come forward to you suggesting that they would help pay for a structure made out of different materials?
No one's actually come forward and proposed to help. I had a conversation with Mr. Foley, and he had said, a time back that the timber frame contractor, it's on Highway 20 there, had approached him years back about potentially doing that scenario, but nothing current. No one's actually approached me about it.
Okay. And as far as expending this grant money, we have a timeline where we have to have this project completed and the money spent. Is that correct?
Correct. June 2026?
Right, and there's quite a few improvements after this, and so what we're looking to do is finish out this design and begin construction as soon as weather allows, and finish construction improvements by springtime of next year.
So that in theory, this would be available for farmers market for next summer?
Correct.
And if we were to wait for community members to step forward, if there were enough interest to help pay for a different type of structure, that could imperil us in our ability to meet the timeline?
And Davey, I think that it might be helpful to try to explain, when it comes to the amount of wood that we're talking about to support something like that, and it's not just the conventional destruction like we see in someone's backyard. Yeah.
Correct. So a lot of people will envision, a pole barn, a simple structure. Yeah, we can build that, and that's there. But under the current design standards, you're building an assembly. It's an occupancy. It's called an assembly occupancy, and so it has to meet higher standards than like a pole barn, because you're going to put the public under it. It's not an agriculture or utility use that you would normally see a pole barn for. And so I did speak to the engineer. And so we have basically, that's the problem with, you know, if we wait for someone to come forward and we do some fundraising, and we have to get this thing built, we have to have it engineered and put it out to bid and to meet a timeline. So if we're going to go down a different direction with a different engineering, you know, it's going to be a lot. You know, right now we're at 30%. We would have to shift gears and go another direction. And in reality, I don't think you're going to get anywhere near the product that you are thinking of. You know, I'm guessing that our engineers would actually have probably some cross braces in there. You wouldn't have quite the open structure that you're envisioning, and you're going to have some really large, heavy timbers for those spans. And you know, in the truss system, in order to do like the cupola, right? That's the little pop-up there. We have that open air. It's a lot of heavy engineering there for the span, and it adds a significant amount of cost. So that's the crux of it. And
So, as we noted at the last meeting, I think all of us have received a lot of comment from the public, and there has certainly been a sense that this is not the right structure for Willits values, Willits Park. However, if we decided to not go forward with this, if the consensus from the community was we don't want it, how badly does that hurt us if we went back to Caltrans and said, we're not going to build the pavilion because we can't agree on the proper size or materials and space and location? What does that do to Willits and its ability to get grant money in the future or have additional improvements made in any of our parks?
Well, I'll answer that question. So again, this was a competitive grant that we received, and there's 72% of the communities that put forward an effort did not receive funding. And again, I think staff was very good at identifying what the grant intended to improve for the communities, and the pavilion very much fit into that intention. And it could have been the reason why we got 1 point higher than the community that didn't receive the funding. Again, I don't know how close we were to the cutoff. But when you're going for other competitive grants, whether it's with Caltrans or other state agencies, your ability to fulfill your grant agreement and essentially follow through on your promise absolutely comes into play in your ability to compete for those grants. And if we did not fulfill our promises on the grants, and we have a good, healthy track record at the moment, I'd like to think that's why part of the reason why we've been successful in receiving the number of grants we do. And I've heard from some state officials that we have more grants per capita than anywhere in California right now. But my thought is this is backed up from other conversations with other jurisdictions and kind of checking in on the feel of things, you know, understanding the scrutiny that some of these improvements are receiving. But I categorized it would be a black eye for the city, and it would make it more difficult for us to compete for future grants for some period of time. So it's definitely something to take into consideration.
You know, at this point, I'm going to open it up to members of the public. So if you'd like to come up and speak.
Thank you, it's after my bedtime.
So please come up, state your name and...
I'm Kathy Boudelier. The house on the corner has been of my family for 60 years. Would you like that in your front yard? Basically fine, it's across the street, but it's right there. That's all you're going to see. Now, one thing that I have never heard brought up, what do you think it's going to attract in the wintertime when it's raining outside? I think it's going to attract a lot of homeless people who want to get out of the rain. What about all the older people who live along that road? 70s, 80s? Are we going to have to deal with that? Was it even thought about? Those are my concerns. You know, I just moved in there 2 months ago. If I'd have known this, I might not have moved in.
Anybody else?
have both some questions I'd like to ask and some comments. Am I only allowed,
Well,
can
you're
I ask
allowed to-
questions now and then make comments later?
No, you've got the time includes your questions, and now if you have to ask your questions as you're talking, then they can come back and answer your questions.
I think my biggest problem right now is the lack of time to really discuss this with all parties in the room in a way that we could reach a consensus. There's so much information zinging around, all around the edges, that it's making it impossible. My story is that Michael Foley saw an opportunity here with the East Commercial upgrades to get the farmer's market back in the park, and he requested shade. And I think that original request, let's get the market back in the park, let's create the shade, has been forgotten in the argument over the pavilion, over the cement, etc. And that really bothers me. I also have heard Michael Foley misquoted. I know what his letters say, and the things that I'm hearing from some city council members are misquotes of what he is advocating for. I've been talking to Dusty Dooley regularly. I've been talking to Michael Foley regularly. I think the process went really, really well, and they did the best possible plan. I really like that they have moved the pavilion to the northeast corner where it leaves a huge swath of green grass. The things that are, as I look at it more and more, I'm beginning to think that when you see Dusty Dooley's map of the park, you see big trees opposite the fire station, and you see little stunty trees on the north edge, which are also the grass has been taken out, and there's wood chips between the curb and the sidewalk that are just ugly. And I think that the idea of shade could actually be resolved with a nice pavilion. I'm not objecting to the pavilion itself. As far as the cement, there's other alternatives. I'm happy to hear Davey willing to explore those other alternatives, which can be minor changes to the contract that are not going to lose us anything. But I think we also need to do something about those trees, and that has not been part of the plan. If the problem is shade and creating shade, let's take care of those trees. Davey has even said the stunted trees that are there could be moved somewhere else they're needed, and it wouldn't cost much to replace those trees, replace the chips. I hope the city will consider committing to a little more than just arguing about the pavilion. Thank you.
Anybody? Jim.
I'm Charles Cully, and I live on northeast corner of the park on State Street. And in the evenings, I have my bedroom window open, and there's quite a contingent of folks that hang out over here by the playground, because that's where the benches are as well as the playground equipment. They're there 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, doing whatever folks do at that time of the evening. And they're rather loud and get rather rowdy. And I see them moving to the pavilion if it gets put in that corner of the park, like the previous neighbor just mentioned about the homeless. Also, throughout the summer, there was a church that met in the park every Sunday morning for about 3 hours. Everybody parked on the east side of the park and along East Commercial. And if the pavilion gets over there on the northeast or the north side of the park, are we eventually going to end up with permit parking for the neighbors that live there, the residents? because it's already sort of a parking issue on some places. So the thing that kind of confuses me is why was a residents around the park given notification about this pavilion if we're not being heard about our comments about it? Thanks.
Anybody else?
I'm Bernard Kameroff. I live across the street from City Park and have for years. And it's a fine park, and the grant that we got is going to bring a lot of improvements, but it has some major problems in my eyes. Briefly, I didn't want to just take the time for the playground, but the rubber material that we're thinking of putting in that playground is a petroleum product. It is not a really recyclable. I have a daughter who has 2 young boys over in Sacramento, and they visit almost every park in Sacramento, and we've seen a couple, and also I've seen the big park in Ukiah. And for some reason or other, almost every one of those parks is 100% wood chips. And the parks that did have the rubber material, she sent me photos of it breaking. It starts to crack, and then it breaks up in pieces, and they haul it away. And apparently some of these parks that did have the rubber material went back to the wood chips. And so it seems to be, there's a big city with a lot of certainly ADA issues, but all these parks, for some reason or other, have gone back to wood chips. But the real reason I'm here to speak is that there's a lot of incredible things that you got planned for this park. But this pavilion, I really think, is something that should be rethought. The farmers market coming back to City Park, I think, is a really fine idea. But they're going to be there for 3 hours, one afternoon a week in the nice weather, and for the rest of the summer, and for all the long winter. That pavilion, I think, is going to be sitting there mostly empty and unused. I know it'll be available for parties, but I really can't see a whole lot of people wanting to have a birthday party or a barbecue on a slab of concrete with a nice view of the restrooms. You look down a Rec Grove where there's a pavilion, the party's down there, and there's a lot. They seem to avoid that pavilion. And I hear from the city, and I hear from city council members that we really need to build this pavilion, because if we don't build it, we're not going to get a future grant. And to my way of thinking, that here we are proposing a pavilion that's hardly ever going to be used, that we really don't need. The farmers market has been doing well without one for years, that a lot of people don't want. And I'm really sorry that Mr. Foley, the director of the farmers market, is not here, because as soon as he found out that it sounds almost certain that that pavilion has to be on concrete, I'm sorry, I won't have to speak for him, but he's told me, and he's told several others, that he really doesn't want a pavilion with concrete under it. And that's from the farmers market. And finally, I can't imagine that we're going to sit there and pour a ton of concrete over what is a city lawn. And so I really hope that you will rethink this, that maybe this pavilion does not belong here at all. I think we're going to regret seeing it, as nice as it might look, and I really hope you all change your minds. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening, Tom Allman. Very good presentation. I mean, it was very educational. I appreciate the timeline and everything you've done. My last career in law enforcement led me to make a lot of decisions, and my decisions were based on some basic principles. And the very first principle would be on any major project, whether it's a grant or whatever it is this going to improve public safety or decrease from public safety? And my first thought on this was something that Kathy had or as had mentioned about the homeless, certainly it's going to, I don't know about attract them every night, but on foul weather, it certainly will. I know we can't ask a question. I think that Councilwoman Khan asked the question if we don't build, the question is mine's a little different. If the pavilion's not built, does the grant still work? And it sounds like it might still work, but future grants could be hindered. A couple questions I'd have would be, you mentioned in your presentation that the reason it was chosen where it was is because that was the least used part of the park. And so the question would be could that be discussed? Could the pavilion be moved across from the fire station to where if homeless people are there, it's going to be much closer to patrol by the police department and sheriff's office and highway patrol, whoever is driving around. They're much more apt to see something in this area than in the far other area. No mention was of lights in the pavilion, so I don't know if the electricity was going to run to the pavilion and underground or not. I hope so. Is this going to be part of the city rental agreement, or are people going to have to pay for the rental part of this? So Snyder Park, and I think the Vice Mayor and I are the only people in this room who knew Bud Snyder. Anybody else? I don't know. Bear might have. He was a fine man, and it's an honor to know that park was named after a genuine, hardworking city employee. That's great. And I'd sure like to know the Snyder's thoughts on this, but I'll end with this, and that's, I've seen this park as a destination point for a lot of travelers on 101. And it's great for our economy. It's good to have them go to 101 Burger and buy their lunch and come to the park and recreate halfway between Oregon and San Francisco. They use Snyder Park. So the additions are going to be a great thing. And I got to tell you, council, you have a lot to weigh on, because is it going, as you brought up, Councilwoman, improvements versus change. And that's a lot of stuff to weigh on. So good luck with it. But kudos to your staff for giving a good presentation. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll bring it back up here. Madge, any closing, anything?
Yeah. One thing I don't think Dusty pointed out on the pavilion footprint slide was on the right side of that, I believe is an aerial view of Alex Thomas Plaza in Ukiah, and the brownish roof there. Is that right? The one that says
Yeah, that's correct. I didn't point that out in the slide, but when I had the slide up trying to better showcase the proposed footprint of the pavilion in relation to the park boundaries and the green space. It was in the bottom right-hand side. I actually had a photo of the pavilion down in Alex Thomas Plaza in Ukiah. When I realized it was about the same size, some folks are familiar with that pavilion, recognizing it's down in Ukiah. And it's of similar size to the one we're proposing. That's correct.
I also was visiting with some people from Ukiah last week, and they were kind of, they were wondering about this project and the community concerns about it. And several of them said, boy, the Alex Thomas Plaza, that covered pavilion there does get a lot of use. People can plan events, even if they don't know whether it will rain or not, they can still plan events there and have sound set up and all of that kind of stuff that is maybe less possible in just a grassy area. So that was one thing that kind of like caught my attention. And I've spent quite a bit of time there at Alex Thomas Plaza, and indeed, it kind of is a nice amenity. If you're picnicking, for example, on a nice day, and all of a sudden the clouds come in and it starts to rain, you want a place you can go and get out of the rain, or the bright sun, baking in the sun. And I wanted to also say, I'm really having trouble weighing the pro and con on this, because I could sort of make a good argument either way, and I'm having trouble deciding which argument I agree with. But another factor, well, I wanted to ask if there is going to be lighting, and then the concern that was raised about leasing so that it doesn't have a homeless camp, those are good questions that I would like to get answers to. I don't mind the materials. I think as far as the steel structure, I think it's relatively attractive. And I was one of the people on council and who came to some of the workshops on this. And I thought, wow, a pavilion in the park, that's pretty cool. And the pictures of it are nice, even though it's not all wood, but it's a nice design. The concrete kind of had me a little bit swallowing hard because it is paving over grassy areas. But as Greta pointed out, the grass isn't exactly the most environmental. It's not as though that grass is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The trees do, but the grass doesn't. So I'm really of two minds about this. It is a permanent commitment, or at least a very long-term commitment. So I don't want us to be, doing it lightly. I want us to make sure we've thought out the pro and the con, and that we really think that this would be a benefit that's worth putting the grant money into, and that's worth having in our park, which is otherwise quite nice the way it is. So I haven't made up my mind yet. But would you answer those questions at least?
So the plan is to trench over electricity to the pavilion, and we do have plans for LED lighting as well as a handful of outlets within the pavilion.
And what about policing in off hours, that kind of thing?
Can I add something wearing my old hat? The parks technically close at 10 o'clock, and if you're having noise issues after that, you should call the police department so they can come deal with the noise problems that are there. I mean, I think the idea was you always took a light hand when it came to if you were sitting in the park quietly, and as we would go through and lock the restrooms at night, we'd stop and chat with folks and say, the park closes at 10, but finish up and see you later. Now, as opposed to if you're banging around and doing things you're not supposed to be doing. I grew up here, I'll be honest with you, we used to play in that old train thing, and during Halloween, we'd probably be throwing eggs out of that thing. So things happen, but so I just throw that out, that you can call after 10 o'clock.
My name is Danette Rigo. I don't know if public comment is,
Can
I ask?
You didn't ask, or you didn't come
I
up
didn't.
further, so I'll let you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm just curious, and I don't know if this is, it seems like it's already been decided. Like this decision has already been made, and we've committed to a grant. And I'm just curious, we're new to this conversation. I'm just curious, is there even an option at this point for us to stand back without losing the grant? It sounds like we could lose the grant, which we're saying, okay, we could do that. But I guess I'm just curious, it sounds like there's still conversation about, deciding. But it sounds to me coming into it from the outside that it's been decided. And so I'm curious about and maybe somebody can answer it. And I know we're new to the conversation, so we're now having a discussion and people are wanting to make changes. So I guess if somebody could address that. I don't know that I've articulated very clearly, but coming in from the outside, it seems like this conversation is happening after the fact, but we've already decided to do the thing. And so it seems like we're supporting it, right? But now we're not. And so I'm just curious. Thank you.
Let me just explain that we accepted the grant. We've been discussing this. There was again, Dusty pointed out, there were several meetings. It was out there, and I guess we can meeting everything to death and keep having meetings on top and doing that. I think the purpose of these meetings are, as we get closer to tightening things up, some design issues, some issues with, do we want to do a different type of color scheme or something like that, because we're almost there, but, and this was kind of a final option for public comment. And also, I mean, I wanted my closing arguments out, or closing statement, I'll probably weigh in a little bit on a couple things I wanted to see or not see. But I remember being over here, and when people were putting up stickies, you know, I want this. Honestly, I remember walking over there. I think the mayor was there and other people when they did a walkthrough of the park and talking about what some of the folks, that's why I asked about the fencing, because one of the moms got up and said, I don't want to have to worry about my toddler running out into traffic because there's not enough fencing around the current playground. And so that was one of the issues that got brought up along the way. And then I think you were going to say something before I jumped in. Were you? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
I guess if you need to kind of make the point of, yeah, we've identified a pavilion, we've received funding for it, we've agreed that we will build it. Obviously, we're hearing some new opinions, some new voices on the matter, and it's bringing it into question. And, you know, yes, there's an opportunity to look at design, you know, maybe reduce the size back to what we put in the grant, possibly, you know, look at other locations within the park. But it's not a situation where you can go, you know, we offered at the pavilion, but a Ferris wheel kind of sounds like a better thing now. So we're going to go ahead and use the money and do that. So you are limited in how you can maneuver or vary it from the grant funds.
I think that you hit the nail on the head, because I think we were all sort of blindsided, city staff and city council alike, by the amount of pushback in the last several weeks about the pavilion, because it felt like we did quite a lot of groundwork last year asking for community input, getting a tremendous amount of community input that all seemed to be positive. So we gave the green light to staff, they went forward, brought back a sweetheart package, and now it seems like it's all sort of falling apart. It very much troubles me that as she was leaving, Kathy said, why bother speaking, it's falling on deaf ears, because she thinks we've all decided that we're just going to go forward and do this. I feel I have heard nothing but negativity about this project. Not one person has come to me and said, you know what, I love this, I want this pavilion, I like everything about it, let's do it. Nobody has said that. They've all said, this is terrible, this is the wrong place, this is the wrong size, this is the wrong material. And so as a representative for the people, I feel like I have to say, put the brakes on this. This isn't right. But I also understand that by doing that, we're essentially cutting staff out at the knees, because they've done all this work and heard from the community and heard from the council who said green light, and now at the 11th hour, we're going to pull the plug on them. So what incentive do they have to ever bring forward any ideas or any improvements for our community if we're just going to throw it back in their faces at the moment of, you know, actual rubber to the road? So I'm really bummed. I'm really disappointed and sad and confused, and I don't know how to make the right choice for our community, because I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think that we did a similar thing last year when after so many people, hundreds of people, came to the charrettes and the planning process for Main Street, and we came up with a plan that was approved for Main Street, and then Caltrans Maintenance came forward and said, okay, we're going to repaint the stripes at the south end of town, and everybody came out of the woodwork and said, we don't want that. And so we told Caltrans, we don't want that, that's not what our community wants. And they said, but you said, and here we are, feels like we're doing it again. So I'm just sort of confused, what does Willits want? We say we want improvements, we say we want changes, and then when we get down to the hard tax, we don't want it. And I don't want people to feel like their comments and their concerns are falling on deaf ears. I'm listening, I just don't know what you want. So it makes this job really hard. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to deliver something that the community is going to be proud of and that's going to serve our community well. And right now I really don't know what the answer is, and I don't know what direction to give to staff. That's what I have to say.
All right. You know, one of the things that I had is that I did attend, you know, those meetings, and I ask people, you know? And I'll be honest with you, a lot of people coming forward now, well, I didn't know about it. They snuck this in the middle of the night. No, we didn't. We went out looking for things. And I'll be blunt, Bear, you did raise your concerns. You were one of the only ones that I think have been consistent about some concerns. You're very tuned into the park. Of all the people that have come forward, and again, Bear's, he'll tell you which way the cow ate the cabbage if you give him the opportunity. So I appreciate that. And it doesn't mean that I don't agree with it, but I kind of felt like we put it out, and a lot of people coming out right now are like, again, it was not brought forward, but it was. And we basically came up with all these things, you know, well, not we, staff came back with this grant, and we're like, wow, we could do all these cool things that we couldn't have. I'll tell you, when it comes to noise, parks are noisy. I mean, so are airports. Don't move next to the airport if you don't like airplane noise. I mean, the reality is there are certain things we can do to mitigate things. I was thinking, number one, my idea was I don't really want to expand the pavilion more. I think I kind of wanted to go back the same size, but put it over there. That's my thought. I think that's what we initially said we'd do, and I get it, the whole engineering thing. Yeah, it'd be nice to do redwood. It'd be nice to do a beautiful redwood thing and say it's the redwood pavilion at the park, but it's not going to cost that. And honestly, I think the reason they brought it to this is the price was such that we could squeeze it into this grant. And so I think that part was well thought out for a number of reasons. I understand about engineering. I mean, anything you do these days, you have to engineer. Otherwise, if it goes boom, you get sued and they say you didn't care about the people under there. So how I would envision a pavilion would be that maybe we put picnic tables there in the summertime that can be moved in and out when the farmer's market isn't there, and it could be used for events. We can move the picnic tables either out of the park and bring them back so that we're not encouraging folks to be loitering there in the middle of the night, making noise. We hopefully, I know it's not a popular thing, but I'd love to see cameras there in the park. Keep an eye on it. The lighting, I think, helps. And I think we can do a lot of things to mitigate, noise issues. And you can do a lot of things to hope people behave, but they don't necessarily behave. I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, so again, if the footprint went back to where it was before, I think I would support it because I want to go after more grants. I mean, we've been very frugal with our money, our tax money, everything that we're trying to accomplish so that we can get the best looking infrastructure. We want to fix things. I mean, the whole time I've been on the council, it's been about eliminating brown water. It's about, we've all, even though we disagree, I think Tom said we should always have a 5-0 or not have a 5-0, and sometimes we have not had 5-0 votes. But the reality is that we disagree on some things and we agree on others. We want good water, we want good roads, we want good projects out there. We do engage the public. And so you look like you had something to say, and I'm going to give you an opportunity before I wrap this up.
I just want for a clarification. So during the planning stage, we developed a concept. The concept was refined once we were green-lighted through the grant application. Now we have initial design. So we went from an idea to something that we can present with dimensions and intent for the use, so we can have a fair discussion.
I'm Charles Cully. I live on State Street. I just wanted to clarify that the first I heard about this pavilion was when I got a thing in the mail in July. And I've been at the meeting every time since then. Prior to July, I knew nothing about the grant or the pavilion or anything else going on in the park.
Bear, go ahead.
I wanted to add this earlier, but obviously I don't think the pavilion is the greatest idea. But I really want to say that I really appreciate Dusty. I always have, and I hope other people have. He's worked with me a lot. I really think that they do a really fine job. I personally think this one item is a mistake. But we move on, you know, I give it my best, but I really don't think we've cut them off at the knees. I really think that we really need them. They do an amazing job. The people in City Park, I see them every day. They're out there cleaning the park. We even help them out Sunday mornings with the trash there, the crows. And we do appreciate everything the city does, and especially Dusty. I'm glad he's here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Robin, if it's going to be quick, okay, because
something surprising I found out. This is a history of the city park. It says in 1925, a pavilion was erected there for public dances. And for a long time, they had dances there. And we had a pavilion at one point. And the way it's cited is beautiful. And I absolutely appreciate Dusty so much because he's very responsive. I think I'm just asking for a little more time to consider, and I like the metal pavilion too. It is a design that creates breezeways, like the breezeways at the high school, that actually creates cooler air passively without any mechanical stuff. I think that's all I want to add. Thank you.
all right, thank you. And did you want to say something?
So I think that we would be, I think that we would have the best chance of pleasing the most people if we considered looking at the structure and returning it to the size that was indicated in the grant, that perhaps it has gotten too large. That is going to be a real turnoff for the majority of people who have weighed in. And that we should seriously look at whether we could have a different material than concrete underneath it. If there was a way to make those pavers, if there was something out there that could serve a function that would make it ADA compliant and still retain a less permanent feel, because that seems to be a sticking point for a lot of people. I personally like the metal and I like the price tag. So I feel like if we could give something that was pared back a little bit and with a different surface treatment underneath, that maybe we could get to a point where more people than not felt like they were getting something good. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, Matt, did you have anything else? Otherwise,
Yeah, some of this comment isn't necessarily based on rational thought, but just intuition. I like what Brenda just said, but I'm wondering if I actually liked it better aesthetically when it was in the middle of the north end of the park, because it was sort of a visual statement. It was a focal point. And I think a smaller footprint of it in that location might be somewhat better, more palatable, and more visually agreeable. That row of stunted trees with the wood chips doesn't seem to be serving us very well. I'm hoping that we could look at maybe replanting some of the trees with more mature trees that would do better, and then planting grass in between. So maybe we take away a little bit of grass by creating a structure there, but we would give back some more grass by not devoting so much of the square footage of the park to the wood chip perimeter. Those are the thoughts that I'm having. Oh, and also, if we scale back to the original footprint, I'm wondering, and also if we put it closer to the sidewalk at the north end of town, of the park, couldn't the farmer's market do a sort of hybrid of a combination of the trucks pulling up to the edge of the sidewalk and the various vendors who wanted to be under the shade at the same time, so that but have it be a little more integrated, so it's not 20 or 30 or 40 feet away from where the other vendors are. So I guess I'm looking for some kind of middle ground that doesn't give us a black eye with the grant, and that does give us some of the advantages of having a covered structure in the park. So I hate to ask the staff to keep looking at other alternatives. They've done such a thorough job of doing all this, but it is problematic, and it's a big decision for us council members who are trying to give direction, hearing from the community and feeling torn. So as much as we can, please everybody a little bit. We're never going to please everybody all the time, but those are my thoughts right now.
Gentlemen, do you want to, anything else you want to say, or?
So what I heard Councilmember Strong say is the idea of moving it back towards the middle of the park as we showcased it on the grant application. And again, location of the pavilion, moving it back to the original size, absolutely, that's available to consider and still remain within the intent of the grant there. And then we also heard about moving it a little bit, or moving it almost to the back edge of the sidewalk within the wood chip area, if I understood correctly. And then the idea would be the farmer's market could operate on, essentially within the pavilion on one side of the sidewalk, and then operate on the street on the other side of the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk stays open for pedestrian access there. Yeah, there are quite a few, design considerations that we would need to take into place, given the difference in topography between the back and the sidewalk. But it is something that our team did look at. Davey can get the details here, but it is doable.
Yeah. So we did actually walk and discuss removing the grass and relocating those trees. We talked with Nigel, head of our
Nigel Sweeney,
head of our parks maintenance crew there. And so the only issue that we have to work out with engineering is we have that set, the elevation of the floor of the pavilion to where we can maintain around it. So mow around it, all those, take care of it. As far as, you don't want it set level with the grass because you'll end up, grass grows, you'll get mud and clippings and more maintenance. So right now, we have an accessible pathway coming from the State Street sidewalk, as well as to the bathroom and the play area. And so right now, the top of sidewalk is considerably lower than the grass. And so maintaining that, the ADA slope of the slab, you could actually slope it 2% towards that sidewalk. But obviously, distance over height, the further you get, the better your slope is. So there are some constraints as far as getting it too close to that sidewalk and still trying to not have it step up to your pavilion, if that makes sense. But it can be pretty close. It is not going to be adjacent. You're probably looking at 3 to 6 feet max, approximately. There's an aesthetic. Talking to our engineer, there's an aesthetic component of the placement of this too. As you get closer to the sidewalk and you're having, structure right next to it, there is an aesthetic feel that does not quite feel right versus framing it with grass or another component, architecturally speaking. It just, if you look at it, it doesn't quite, but you can't please everybody.
I'm willing to budge if it moves over a little bit, as long as we don't dive into that sweet spot where we're losing that ability for people to play Frisbee or the other stuff they're playing there. Because I was up in your office that one day looking down, and I'm going, I can't even see where the pavilion's going to go from up there because people were playing, and my view was this giant field that we could play football on this side, and I would hate to interfere with that. And then I'd be open to hear about this other product because I don't want to close my, but I have some reservations if it's plastic and it'll break down eventually. And then structurally, you'd still have to sink cement in the corners or wherever you have the pillars for it to be structural. So then I've seen when they try to mow out there at the cemetery around the plots, so it's sometimes really hard to mow around cement, so. Anything else?
Do you feel like you've gotten sufficient direction or any direction?
Yeah.
Well, I think what I did here is we are going back to the 40 by 60 instead of the 40 by 80. I heard the idea of moving it back towards the center and moving it closer to the street. You've heard from staff that, and I think, Vice Mayor Gonzalez, you noted that it does interrupt that green space, which was one of the prime reasons why we recommended moving it over to the corner there. But I think that's where, and then also we heard continue to look for alternative materials other than the concrete, with the recognition that, we do need to be ADA compliant. We don't want to set ourselves up for something where you're looking at weekly, maintenance in order to maintain ADA compliability and take that liability away from the city, where if somebody trips on a, half-inch crack or something that's just quite not level, and now we're paying for the pavilion all over again. But I think what I could, would be helpful at getting some clarification is on the location part. I'm not quite sure where we landed as we move forward towards final designs on that.
I'm flexible on the location, whatever serves the community the best. I think that the original design as presented with it in the middle looked good to me. I think the justification for putting it in the least used part makes sense, but for me, one way or the other, I don't. I am a little troubled by the idea of moving it back to the middle and then having a longer driveway, which is more concrete for vehicles to access it, to get those farmers market trucks in there. That doesn't make sense to me. It's like you win on one hand and you lose on the other. But I don't.
Yeah, I'd almost not want to have them drive over the grass or add more concrete.
We would probably look at putting the driveway off the state at that point instead of.
Yeah, because that would be my only concern, that
I definitely didn't like the idea of putting it over by the fire station. I think that even though that makes sense as far as more eyeballs on it, that's the prime space where people are playing volleyball and playing games and running their dogs on leash. And I don't want to get into that space.
And I think if we walk over there right now in the dark, yeah, you've got a little light from the bays of the fire department, but it's not going to be illuminated to the point that I think that, I don't think that's going to matter much. And then we're cutting into the area. I think that when I see people doing park activities, it's there on that side of the park. And so, and again, I would ask that staff, if and when this gets built, that we think about the environmental issues as far as moving park benches or picnic tables in and out, so that we're not encouraging its use at the wrong time of the year, those sort of things. And the lighting obviously would be such that it may be on a timer, so that it, maybe 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock it goes off, so that it's not an eyesore, but at the same time it's lit up at those magic hours where folks are there. That's just my thought. Okay, hopefully you've got enough direction. All right.
So we're leaving the decision on the location to staff?
Well, no, I guess my concern is you may come back and say, look, it's not going to work, or the boring.
We can make either work.
All right, well.
I guess in that case, I lean towards the northeast corner, just for preserving as much of the open green area as possible. It makes more sense to me.
Madge, what's your feeling?
Well, I was just going to remark that being on the council, having to give guidance on something that has a lot of controversy is making us squirm, but us sending it back to you is making you squirm, and I don't think that's fair either. So getting fairly clear direction so you don't just keep running back and forth between my opinion and someone else's opinion. And that's why I'm glad to hear Greta actually saying what she prefers. If it were put in the center of the north end and made a little smaller, yes, I would think the driveway would go to State Street, not all the way over to Marin. So that wouldn't mean a huge extra driveway. But I can go either way as far as that's concerned. So I guess I'm flexible too.
Do you have a feeling one way or the other?
You know, the only advantage I see, again, as long as we leave plenty of room for people to play over there, is that it's, if the unwanted folks started to congregate there, they're not right next to the playground per se. But at the same time, it's accessible for parties and things like that. Again, with the environmental design sort of things, or just by placing things in and out, then I think we could accomplish it on that North State Street side there.
So you're saying in the middle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
I'm
not
fine.
so much in the middle, but maybe not so much in the corner. I guess I'll call it the sweet spot.
The one other thought that I have is, if we're doing this, if we're building a pavilion, let's be proud of it. Let's not, try to hide it. Let's put it right there in the
Okay.
center of things.
All right. Well,
Because
then
I think
I'm
it can be a central point. It could be an attraction.
all right. Thank you. All right. All right.
Call Sabrina and Larry back in?
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for your input. You were heard. Whether you got what you wanted or not, you were definitely heard.
And I'm serious, you need to call, if there's noise over there, you need to call. And that's how, as officers, you figure out where the problems are. You hear the public and you go, you know what, most of the time if the officer's not in there, he's not hearing it. I used to tell people, if you're throwing a party, you can throw it across the PD because we're probably not there.
It appears Larry, Mr. Stransky has gone.
Oh, is Sabrina still here?
Sabrina's still.
All right. We're now on item 10.
Wow.
The agenda.
I wonder if my business will survive this thing here.
All right. Returning to the meeting, Councilmember Stransky left shortly after we departed and said he would not be returning. I don't know what decision was made, but I do know that whatever it was, it must have been difficult, and so thank you for putting in the time and the effort. All right, we have the department monthly reports at the second meeting of each month, and this is the first meeting. So there are no reports unless, let's see, Kathy's not here for airport. Dusty, do you have anything for community development?
I know.
Okay.
Anything on the parks?
I think, sounds like you covered it.
Talked a lot about parks.
Okay.
Hey,
Nothing, do we have anything from finance?
No, we are, unfortunately, turn this on. I think it was a comment was made at the last council meeting about the status of the audits. I have to inform the council that they are going to be delayed, not as originally planned or scheduled, as you heard at the last council meeting. We're looking at least having the 22-23 moves along as quickly as possible. We were hearing a date in early November. I have to inform the council that date is not going to happen. Maybe towards the end of the month, I will know more in a week or so about our status.
Okay. Police? Anything to add?
No, we're looking, Interim Chief Chris Dewey, we're moving forward with the next candidate for interim chief, Mike Parrish, formerly of Katati, Chief of Police. We are in backgrounds with him and looking to have him come on board at the end of November, early December, and overlap with Mr. Dewey.
Did you have any? Okay. Services and facilities or utilities?
I think we talked about the road projects and the underground utilities. Right now, I have no other updates on those facilities or those programs.
It's only 9:20 and there's not a single person in the audience, and Dusty's sitting alone at the staff table. Yeah, this is very unusual. Okay, all right. City council announcements, communications, and reports. Vice Mayor Gonzalez looks ready to go, so I'll start with you.
I had LAFCO on Monday, and I guess there are other things of note, but basically we did the Casper South Water District Municipal Service Review, and we put that on, and it was on for review, and we voted on that. And then also we appointed the public member for LAFCO, and it was Willits' own Ragda that shows up here at the meetings. She was the only applicant, and after a brief interview, she was appointed to LAFCO, and so she'll be the alternate public member. The other public member, the permanent one, is Jerry from, used to be the garbage person.
Jerry
Thank
Ward.
you, thank you, I was drawing a little blank there, thank you. So that's what I've got there, and then Larry and I went to the wastewater meeting and got an update, and some of our Musketeer staff weren't there, but, I guess Brian Wallace from EBA was supposed to come, and that's gonna happen later on.
We'll be at the October 25th meeting.
And then, I guess we heard that they did not use any groundwater during this last period. And they had problems with the SCADA. And we're having the FATS, what is it, fog?
Fog.
Yeah.
Grease traps.
Yeah, Grease Traps got an update on that, and then they're continuing to work with Brook Trails on their growth and capacity service.
Service agreement.
Yeah, service agreement. And we're still waiting on the railroad for an MOU to get rid of our water pipe across their trestle. That seems to be hitting some sort of barrier there. And I think that was the unless you weren't there, I think, right?
No, sorry, I was not there.
So, okay, that's what I got.
Thank you. Councilmember Strong, do you have anything?
Yes. Sorry, am I on?
You
My
are.
audio on?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So all three of my other agencies are active this month. The beginning of October, the Sonoma Clean Power meeting had a very interesting discussion because the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, is extending the contract for the San Onofre nuclear power plant that was supposed to shut down in 2025. They're extending it to 2030 with no guarantee that it will be shut in 2030, but they're requiring all the electricity users to pay for the power between 2025 and 2030. And we, the Sonoma Clean Power, cannot sell that to somebody else. So the dilemma was, we're going to be paying for it, and if we didn't use it, we would have to pay for more electrical power somewhere else, which would increase our rates substantially. So we didn't like it, but we had to agree to go ahead and use the nuclear generated power. There is a memo that I gave Dolores to copy for the council members if you're interested in it. It gives a lot of the detail about how this is coming down from the PUC. And also Sonoma Clean Power, while not being happy about using the electric power from San Onofre, is going to be very active lobbying to make sure that it does close in 2030 and to have more planning so that we are not as dependent on nuclear as our backup source and don't have to supplement fossil fuel power with nuclear. So anyway, that was, and the memo gives a lot of detail about that. I won't go into more detail, but it was very interesting. The next agency that's going to be meeting is the Economic Development Financing Corporation. And instead of a regular business meeting this month, they're having an annual meeting. And that's going to be on October 17th, starting at 11:30 and going to 4:30. And it's going to be in Willits, I believe, at the Runnicott Room at the museum. So people that are interested in what the EDFC is doing can participate in that. And so we're looking forward to that. And then on the 31st of October, Halloween Day at 9 in the morning, the Solid Waste Management Authority will be meeting as usual in Ukiah, but I'll be attending probably almost certain from Willits in case anyone is interested in that. And they're only meeting about every quarter. Well, actually, no, the EDFC is only meeting quarterly. MSWA is meeting when they can get everybody to come, and it's been difficult. But that's going to be on October 31st at 9 in the morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Madge. All right. Councilmember Connie?
Thank you. I went to MCOG this Monday. I just wanted to give a little more detail about the item that Supervisor Haschak mentioned. The sales tax measure that he talked about we agreed to set money aside to put polling out countywide to determine whether it was worthwhile to go forward with a sales tax measure that would be put out to the voters of Mendocino County to create essentially a road tax for the unincorporated regions. All of our cities already have that. So Willits, Point Arena, Fort Bragg, and Ukiah already approved these measures where we set aside a percentage, a quarter of a percentage.
So we wouldn't pay extra.
Right. It would be just burden on the voters in the unincorporated areas, or any of us who spend money in unincorporated areas, essentially. So this wouldn't be an extra tax for Willits City residents. It's just a county thing, and essentially it really is a push from the state to have all of our agencies be what they call self-help districts, which means we're putting some of our own money into our roads and not just relying on SB1 or the funds that come from the state. So all the cities already have that benefit, and now the county is looking to get their portion also because they have, frankly, too many miles of roads to maintain and not enough money to do it with. So that's what that is. We also got final approval from CPUC for the regional energy network that Willits and Mendocino County will be a part of. It's now separated from the Central Coast area, so it's just Northern California specific, which is really good news for our ratepayers. We've already been paying into this program through our PG&E bills, and now what it's going to do is make more programs, rebate programs, available to Mendocino County residents. It's a great thing. So if we do any kind of upgrades to energy efficient washing machines or putting in new doors or windows to our homes, we'll be eligible for rebates that we haven't been before. We've been paying for it with no benefit. Now we're going to get the bang for our buck. So really good news. I'm really proud of MCOG staff for sticking with this. It's been a messy process, but we're almost there. So we got the approval from CPUC, and good things are coming for our county residents. And that's my report.
All right. Let's see, September 22nd, attended a gala fundraiser at the Willits Community Theater. October 1st, there was a city selection committee meeting. It's where the mayors get together once a year and decide issues. The only business before us was selecting an alternate for Sonoma Clean Power. We appointed one of the council members from Fort Bragg who wanted it. October 3rd, took a tour, another tour of the California Conservation Corps. Council members Stransky and City Manager Bender went with me, and it was just another opportunity to continue to build that relationship with the California Conservation Corps and look at some of the ways that the project has been coming along. And I think one of the standout moments was when they were showing us their gymnasium, and they are painting one whole side of the gymnasium to be a picture of the redwoods in our park. So it was nice. You can tell that they're taking lots of local culture and incorporating it into the tiniest of details within the California Conservation Corps. So really embracing Willits, which I thought was nice. October 4th, Vice Mayor Gonzalez and I took a tour of the City of Willits Airport. We learned a lot about the upgrades that have taken place up there, and
Looks really good.
it does. It looks really nice. You can see a lot of hard work went into it.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Actually, I want to get back to the California Conservation
Sure.
Campus there, Core. We have received notice that their contractor will be doing internal site flushing. We have sent out notices. They potentially may be impacts on our side of the system. So once again, if any resident or account holder has experienced sediment in their water, just let us know. Please contact utility billing at City Hall here, and we'll address it as best we can. So what they're doing, they're on their own separate system. They're connected. They're turning on everything internally. They're going to flush their lines prior to a fire marshal inspection that is scheduled for next week.
And because so much water is rushing through for the test,
Yes.
they could potentially
Yes.
displace sediment.
Knowing where
across the
they are
groundwater.
located on our system towards the head and the vault over there on East Hill.
Thank you for adding that
pressure.
in. Yeah. Let's see, what else? Every Monday at 9 a.m. I've been meeting with constituents, which has been nice hearing about community concerns and then just updating them on different things that are happening throughout the city. Lots of MTA meetings just talking about public transportation, advocacy, and routine management matters. And just want to give a shout out to Councilmember Connie for her advocacy on MCOG and appreciation for the work that MTA has been doing to support transportation, but even more specifically the senior center. I got a call from Richard Baker over at the Willits Senior Center, and he was elated to find out that they were going to get $20,000 to help bridge the gap of the lack of funding that they're going to receive as a result of less transportation tax dollars coming in, because fewer people are buying fuel within the city limits. So thank you. It was very much appreciated from the senior centers, from the MTA,
Madam Mayor?
and myself.
Regarding MTA, at a previous council meeting, you mentioned that the owners of JD Red House were asking about potentially relocating that bus stop that's in front of their facility.
Yes, that was a
Has
request.
Okay.
I just let them know today that MTA needs a written request, and so I've left it in the hands of the business owner.
Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as we receive a written request, then we can place it on the agenda for discussion. We just need the written one first.
Thank you.
All right, and then I've been meeting with lots of neighbors in and around East San Francisco and Railroad Avenue to address issues over there. I relayed them to city manager, and the neighbors have already begun thanking city staff and the Willits PD for the work in removing a trailer and keeping an eye on some drug activity and in a camper and some other things that have been going on over there. So they just wanted me to express their appreciation that they're already seeing some results, and they look forward to more improvements over in that area to help keep the neighborhood in good shape. With that, do we have any good and welfare this evening? All right, hearing none, the good and welfare will be that we are out of here at 9:32, and meeting is adjourned.